Good morning, everyone. Starting up the final Higurashi with the full moon. Let's get our nice little difficulty thing. Matsuri Bayashi, at least let it end with a blissful dream. Festival accompanying chapter. The riddle you have been entrusted with solving now finally becomes unraveled. What must be done to stop the chain? And what will happen in the ultimate end? It's a showdown between the conclusion you reached and the one I reached. There is no difficulty. You should understand that now. That laughterful. Everyone is entitled to happiness. The difficult part is accepting that. Difficult is fulfilling that. I too am entitled to happiness. The difficult part is working on a compromise. Frederica Berncastle. But why does Rika know that one? If it's Frederica's quote. The study was filled with piles of books and papers. In that study, there was a full-figured old man writing something at his desk in utmost concentration. There was also a little girl sorting out papers on the carpet. She almost looked as though she was playing with them, but the serious expression she was wearing made it clear that she wasn't. Grandpa, I'm done sorting them out. Thank you. Let's see, what happened? Look, there are lots of people with the same symptoms. It's way higher than the national average. That's exactly what I expected. There's an intriguing treatise over here, too. It discusses psychosurgery and civilization. It also predicts the existence of parasites that inhabit the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is what causes emotions. That's right. Emotions aren't created by the heart. They're just side effects of the chemicals secreted by the organ known as the brain. Everything you feel is chemicals. If parasites capable of acting on that organ did exist and spread to create a colony, then that colony's thoughts would be unified. So are parasites the cause of the spread of ideology? When ideologies clash, is that because different parasites are competing to expand their habitat? That, or to expand religion, to expand national borders, or to expand a race. Yes, the normal reasons. It's hypothesized that our differing cultural communities and their conflicts are the results of parasites influencing human thoughts. There are people in other countries who think the same thing as you, Grandpa. Of course there are. There are countless parasites on this earth, and it's well known that some coexist with their hosts and some control their hosts. We've also discovered plenty of parasites that infect humans. Yet despite that, we adamantly deny the possibility that parasites could infect humans and control their hosts. Even the hypothesis of such a thing. Why do you think that is? Humans aren't special in any way. Of course, my reaction is also that thought, because that hypothesis would also mean changing our view to see the spread of ideologies from the perspective of epidemiology. If conflicts in ideology can be resolved through debate, then they're peaceful. But if those conflicts occur epidemically, they become frightening. And if one were to treat bad thoughts or the spread of culture as an epidemic? Think about the Black Plague in Europe during the Middle Ages. A vile infectious disease spread. They forced infected people into hospitals and didn't release them until they completely recovered. Some even died in those hospitals. They burned their corpses. They confiscated and burned everything those patients touched for fear the plague infected it. They even suspected families of infection and forced them into hospitals. So they'd hospitalize healthy people over individual ideas? Replace an idea with a disease. The rest is the same. Patients won't be released until they completely recover. People burn everything that may have been touched by the patient. They force the patient's family to go to the hospital. People are free to think what they will, right? Thoughts aren't pests. If an idea was created by parasites, it would be exactly the same as a plague. In other words, an idea is like an incurable epidemic. So you mean, anyone with a different idea is treated like they have a disease? That's right. If we bring this to its logical conclusion, parasites could be responsible for mass murders of people belonging to different races or religions. but this can be seen as justifying genocide. Therefore, talking about parasites in brains has been taboo since the war. And not because we want to keep it secret. What does taboo mean? It means something people shouldn't get involved with. That's why nobody researches these things. Nobody even remembers anything about parasites that live in the brain. They assume that parasites which control humans simply don't exist. That's almost funny. How can they prove something that doesn't exist? That's just impossible. Exactly. Proving that the devil exists is easy. You just have to show him to someone. But you can't prove he doesn't exist. You can't show somebody something that doesn't exist. It's almost as if the parasites in the brain are controlling people so that they can keep their own existence a secret. Me and my grandfather shared a happy laugh together. But then, humans are simply another animal in this natural world. We might be at the top of the food chain, but it's foolish to think that we are superior to others. Humans can be controlled by parasites. Just because the existence of such parasites hasn't been proven doesn't mean they don't exist. They exist. I know they do. That's happened before in the scientific world, right? That's right. Not all scientists are recognized for their work while they're alive. There were many who were ridiculed and couldn't prove their theories to be true. But Grandpa, I hope your theory will be recognized before you die. Otherwise, it would be so sad. Don't worry. God doesn't ignore people who work hard. Hard work always pays off in the end. But when will that happen? Nobody knows when God is going to descend from heaven. Just like you never know when you'll be robbed. So we always have to be alert and ready so that we don't miss our chance. That was something my grandfather said all the time. Nobody knows when efforts will bear fruit, but it will happen one day. That's why you must always work hard so you have no regrets when the time comes. Your efforts will bear fruit someday. That's what he meant. But is it going to happen before you die? Even though there were so many scientists whose work weren't recognized while they were alive? That was such a cruel thing to say, but it's true. And I didn't mean it. I had seen how hard my grandfather had been working, and I also knew he wouldn't live forever. I just wanted his work to gain recognition before he died. Do you know of the resurrection of Jesus Christ? Yeah. He was crucified and resurrected after 3 days. You told me about it. How do you think Jesus was resurrected? Didn't he just get up as if he was waking up in the morning? He was buried after his execution, so his body was in the ground. Did he break open the tombstone and crawl out like a zombie? No. That wouldn't be called a resurrection. The sinners who killed Jesus imagined exactly the same thing. Jesus predicted just before he was executed that he would come back to life after 3 days. The sinners buried Jesus, sealed his tomb, and posted guards to watch over it. But what Jesus meant wasn't that he would resurrect physically. He meant his teachings would be resurrected. After 3 days, Jesus' teachings were resurrected, and people regained their belief. The hearts of those who wanted to be shown the proper way revived his teachings. That's what the resurrection of Jesus is all about. I actually didn't know that. He came back to life in the hearts of his believers. Jesus doesn't exist physically on this earth, but he exists in people's hearts. In other words, that's when Jesus became an existence superior to humans. Even if it's after the author's death, as long as his work receives a fair evaluation, it will live again as a great achievement. Even if my body is gone by then, my life will return and receive recognition. Does that mean you'll become a god just like Jesus did? Indeed. My research will be recognized for what it is someday. That's when I will become a god. Sort of like live streaming. Or streaming, I should say. That's why I'm not in a rush to achieve that recognition. I don't know when that day will come. God doesn't know that either. But the day will come. That's why I need to continue to work as hard as I can. It was very sad to hear my grandfather say that his life would end one day. He wasn't ill, and he didn't only have a few years left to live. But set next to the average lifespan, his remaining years didn't look like much. The only person left in my life was my grandfather. So I didn't even want to consider what it would be like with him gone. Grandfather must have remembered that I didn't like to talk about that subject. With a tender smile, he gently patted my head. Of course, I want my research to be recognized before I died. I will do my best. Yep, I'll do my best to help you too. I purposely didn't mention the before you die part. I caught myself before I said it. Thank you, that makes me very happy to hear. Grandfather smiled in satisfaction. His research wasn't exactly outrageous. He wasn't trying to uncover the mysteries of the universe. He was only searching for the possibility that parasites could be responsible for human behavior. Nothing more than that. Nothing outrageous. It really wasn't a wild idea. We even had some leads. Hinamizawa Village, Shishibone City, blank Prefecture. The villagers there are possessed by a powerful homesickness. When they are unable to return, they allegedly behave abnormally, as if they are cursed. There are also some bizarre rules in place in the village, based on their belief system. When he was working with the military during the war, my grandfather noticed similarities between the people in Hinamizawa, and assumed that some kind of existence was responsible for their odd behavior. He had been researching it ever since. In the middle of the 20th century, numerous strange diseases were discovered all over Japan. Most of them were caused by infectious parasites, and people started to pay attention to this forgotten field of study. Grandfather's research was simply one of those investigations into such diseases. Therefore, he believed it would be published amongst other research and attain recognition soon. But if his research didn't bear fruit before his death, I wanted to continue it. I wanted to continue his research. Grandfather taught me, resurrection isn't something that happens physically. It's when your life's work is appreciated. That's what he meant by resurrection. That's when he'll become a god. So when my grandfather dies, he'll still be with me forever. I wouldn't have to be alone ever again. I will always be with my grandpa. Our works will gain recognition, and we will both become gods, gaining eternal peace. I will make my grandfather into a god. I will become a god. Therefore, we will be granted eternity. We'll be together forever and ever. Are we going to the present now, or is it still... Looks like the past still. I was looking at the key on a keychain. The key was labeled Henhouse, but the lock Eriko was trying to open didn't belong to that door. Who's Eriko? It should have opened effortlessly. At least that's what was supposed to happen. But it didn't open. I noticed beads of sweat forming on Eriko's forehead. She was the one who came up with this idea. Eriko was starting to panic. The rest of us started to panic too. This only opens the hen house. Let's stop. Let's go back. Shush. We were supposed to be cleaning out the hen house. If they found us back here, if they found out why we were here and why we were trying to open up the lock to the back door, then all four of us were sure to be sentenced to splayed piggy. Don't panic, Eriko. That key opens this lock, right? You already tried it, right? Will you shut up for a minute? This is the right key. It's just hard to open, that's all. She was almost shrieking. Our hearts were pounding loudly. It was as though the sound of our heartbeats was echoing throughout the hallway. And at that point, we heard footsteps that didn't belong to a child. Shh! Someone's coming. The three of us held our breath, but Eriko didn't hear it. She kept fussing with the lock and the key, as if everything would be okay if she could just open the lock. Eriko, somebody's coming. Be quiet. I know this is the right key. I'm not dreaming. I already tried it, and it opened. Come on, why isn't this working? When this lock is open, we can be happy, and we can say goodbye to this hell. Eriko, someone's coming. Bam. Gunshot. My father and mother died. I don't know exactly how old they were. I was too young to remember. They went shopping without me, and that must be why they were punished. It was a train accident. What a terrible disaster. A lot of people died in that incident, and it's all because of her parents' fault. But maybe my father was one of the lucky ones. He was still alive when he arrived at the hospital, so he was able to share his final words with me. My mother died instantly. Daddy, 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 Daddy! I didn't want to admit that this person I could hardly recognize was my father. As I called out to him, I hoped that it was someone else instead. But, unfortunately, it was my father. Maybe I shouldn't have woken him, because when I woke him up, he was reminded of the miserable agony that he had forgotten. Oh, Daddy, 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 Daddy! He tried to move his right arm, so he could pat my head, but his arm was wrapped in bandages, and his hand was no longer there. I couldn't find his hand anywhere on the bed. Why would his hand be there? I only had scary memories of his right hand. Its main job was to slap me when I did something bad, but I never wished it to be gone. Besides, that hand also patted my head. Then it didn't just slap you, even though that only happened a few times. It was a big, warm hand, and it stroked my head very gently. But no matter what good deeds I did, he could no longer rub my head. No, his hand was the least of his worries. He had to go into emergency surgery. The doctors already warned me that the chance of him surviving was very low. That was why I was allowed to see him, regardless of his condition. Not only could he no longer rub my head, he might be gone forever. Daddy, the surgery will make you better, right? Daddy, you'll get better, right? Right? Listen carefully. Your daddy might not make it. Even if I die, you have to be strong, okay? No, no. You'll get better. The doctor is going to make you better. So you're not going to die. He was a stubborn and old-fashioned father. He believed endurance was a virtue, and he never complained about anything. That was why I couldn't believe he actually said he might not make it. I tried desperately to deny his words, but even that wish wouldn't prolong his life. My father, knowing his time was limited, tried to tell me some important things, but I interrupted his efforts by crying like a baby. I just wanted him to slap me, just like he used to do every time I cried like a baby, but he would never slap me again. But listen well, your mother and I both lost all of our family in the war, so after I'm dead, there won't be anyone left to take care of you. He didn't need to tell me that. My parents used to tell me that all the time, so I was aware of that fact. In other words, my father was the only relative I had left in this entire world. If I die, you can count on Dr. Takano. Dr. Hifumi Takano. Can you say it? Hifumi Takano. That's right, Dr. Hifumi Takano. He's my former teacher. He will help you. Daddy, 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 Daddy. Many doctors came into the room in a hurry. He wanted to tell me something else, but the doctors stopped him from talking, so I wasn't able to hear him. I was kicked out of the room. I didn't know what to do. Nobody told me how my father was doing or when the surgery was going to start. And nobody told me that was going to be the last conversation I ever had with my father. I think I asked people at the government office about Dr. Takano. They'd asked me if I knew his phone number. I said I didn't. Then they didn't ask me anything further. Sometimes they told me they'd look into it, but nothing led to anything. They couldn't find me a guardian, so I ended up going to an orphanage. At the time, there were plenty of orphans from the war, so although there were many orphanages around, they were all full. There were also some orphanages run by civilians. I was sent to one of those civilian orphanages. There was no profit to be had in taking an orphan in the first place. So I thought, those civilians who were running orphanages must have been very good people. I was sure they hoped that the children would grow in this loving environment and enter into society with a sense of gratitude. But reality isn't so kind. How many children in this world can actually express their gratitude towards their parents in the first place? Children are supposed to be nurtured by their parents' love. Therefore, when that environment is destroyed, their hearts are wounded. Every child has his or her own personality. Receiving affection doesn't guarantee that a child will become someone angelic. Not everyone's heart can be healed. That was why there were some problem kids at the orphanage. Maybe I shouldn't call them problem kids, though. The sadness and despair of losing their parents, and the anger at having to hide such feelings filled those kids' hearts. Spending time individually with the children could have solved their problems. But at the orphanage where I was, none of the staff members even tried to spend time with them or put in an effort to understand them. All they could do was make sure that the kids followed the rules. Therefore, they could only see the children's emotional pleas for help as problems. In this world, nobody expresses love without expecting something in return. The person who founded that orphanage was expecting something in return as well. He wanted the children to appreciate him. That was why such a faint dream was destroyed by cruel reality. The children called the orphanage a prison, and nobody appreciated the staff at all. In fact, all they did was complain. That made the staff slowly realize that love alone couldn't run a facility like that. Just like how the children called it a prison, the staff started to recognize the facility as a prison too. It was a chain reaction resulting from mistrust on both sides. The staff bound the children with rules so they could suppress problem behavior. There was a framed picture of the founder of this orphanage, but I had never seen him in person. Was he satisfied with the fact that he put his own money into this social service? Or maybe he finally realized his dream of being surrounded by angelic children and being celebrated for what he did was simply that, a dream? I don't know. But there's one thing I'm certain of. Such a dream didn't exist at the orphanage. There were so many rules and several plausible standards outlined for us, but the most valued one was silence. Children's chatter tends to increase each other's volume, just like mics drawing closer. And sometimes that leads to fights and the disturbance of order. So children were forbidden from speaking with each other. With those disallowed, they must have thought things would go smoothly. However, I think I always heard people's voices at the orphanage. There were two kinds of voices. One was the staff yelling, and the other was the children crying. We were not allowed to walk around inside the orphanage freely, so we never knew who it was that was crying. One time, along with the crying and yelling, we heard the noise of metallic things being smashed against each other. We knew it was some kind of punishment, but there was no way for us to even imagine what it was. We trembled, pretended we didn't hear anything, and kept working on our assignments. One of my roommates told me it was the casket punishment, but she didn't tell me any further. I didn't want to know either. Even if we behaved exactly the same way as yesterday, if the staff was in a bad mood, they might pick on us. So even if I didn't want to know, I might suddenly find out what the casket punishment is one day. The footsteps of a staff member were getting closer. We noticed them, so we straightened our backs and pretended we were studying hard. It was more important that the staff saw us doing so than us actually getting any work done. I noticed the girl next to me was falling asleep, so I poked her with my elbow. She noticed my signal and straightened her back like the other children. It was almost evening. This was the hardest time for us to keep ourselves awake, and the most dangerous time. The door to our room opened, and a mean-looking man showed up. Then he looked around to make sure none of us were falling asleep. Even if we were actually studying hard, if he thought we were asleep, we were out. That was why we had to make sure we appeared to be studying very hard. The man walked around our desks. I'd hoped he would just walk by me. That was what we all prayed as we kept working on our homework. The more we pretended to study hard, the more we could hear the sound of metal objects. The sound of metal objects crashing into each other, along with screams. We couldn't even imagine what the poor subject of that punishment was going through. Maybe there was something even worse than the casket punishment. To erase such fears, we tried to concentrate even harder on our work. We kept working as the metal sounds and the screams went on forever. Oh, is this the present now? No, I don't think so. The only time we were allowed to exchange words with our roommates was right after turning the lights off to go to bed. Being located in the middle of the mountains, the orphanage was very quiet at night. After making sure the staff members were far enough away from our rooms, we enjoyed talking amongst ourselves. That was the only leisure time allowed to us. Though it wasn't anything nice like enjoying pleasant conversation. Why? Because we mostly talked about others behind their backs. We spoke of things like that member of staff is only strict or unfair or malicious towards this person, and so on. We just repeated those topics forever until someone couldn't keep themselves awake anymore. We even discussed how we could get back at the staff, and we took revenge on all of them in our imagination. Some kids even started to cry when talking about it, difficult as it was for us. Although the subjects we spoke of were negative, talking about them was the only way to vent our frustration, and even though we felt despair about tomorrow, we were able to fall asleep. But sometimes a different subject popped up. It was about the Yurigaoka House of Love and Mercy on the other side of the river. Yeah, over there I hear they get not only nap time, but snack time too. Plus, their president is a very nice person. The grass is greener on the other side was a privately run orphanage, just like the one I was at. But it was a very kind facility, unlike ours. It seemed like a fantasy land compared to our current environment. A few years before, when this place was a lot worse, a few children tried to escape. It was hard to believe there was a time when this orphanage was even worse to live at. Supposedly, 3 or 4 people tried to escape. I don't know the exact number, though. They headed to the House of Love and Mercy. Their escape was a success, except for one unlucky child. They were able to get to the property of the House of Love and Mercy. I guess the staff couldn't follow them into the other orphanage's property. In other words, the other facility's property had to be out of their jurisdiction. That was weird. The staff were frustrated that kids got away from them, and they dragged the one they caught back here. I'm sure they wanted to bring back the others who got away from them too. I'm certain the staff were determined not to let a single one escape. It was easy to see that determination in the obstinate way they locked the place up after that event. But they were never able to bring back the ones that got away. No matter how much the staff were mortified, they couldn't reclaim the children and punish them. In other words, if you could make it to the House of Love and Mercy, then you could escape the evil clutches of this hell and enter a new hell. On the other hand, the one they caught went through such misery afterwards, yet the exact details of how he was punished were never passed down. All that remained were ominous phrases left behind by those who knew him at the time. The drowned ducky, the mashed caterpillar, the splayed piggy. I can't even imagine what kind of punishments they were. The only thing I can say is that those punishments were supposed to be far more harsh than the casket punishment, which was the most cruel punishment I knew of the time. I can only imagine how horrible those punishments were from their ominous names. After that, the captured kid's wish came true, and he was able to leave the orphanage as a corpse, safely, and enjoy his freedom while breathing in fresh air under the blue sky. Well, according to the rumors, that wasn't what happened at all. Of course. While he was playing in the boiler room, he slipped and fell, injured his brain, and died. What a nice coinkydink. The children were instructed not to go into the boiler room after that incident. Everyone knew the boiler room was always locked. So everyone knew he was killed. And not just that, he was killed after being tortured. He was killed to teach the other children that they would face hell on earth if they tried to escape. Yet those who faced that risk and made it out obtained ordinary, average lives full of love and mercy's namesake, which were far better conditions than we lived in here. Maybe the House of Love and Mercy was really heaven. Maybe all the orphanages are pretty much the same, true. But compared to my orphanage, I bet anything else would have been better. Even if someone escaped successfully, the police would catch him. Then he'd be sent back to the orphanage, which would be pretty much the same as being killed. However, if he could reach the House of Love and Mercy, they'd take him in. They wouldn't send him back. By talking about escaping to the House of Love and Mercy, We were trying to forget how cruel reality was to us. Then, one day, the leader of our group, Eriko, said to us quietly, "Would you try to escape if you had a chance to?" Who didn't want to escape from here? It was a rather foolish question, but that wasn't what she meant. If there was a chance to escape, would you take that chance knowing what you had to go through if you got caught? That was what she meant. Not one of us could answer immediately. If the previous escape incident was a total success, then we might have thought differently. But after that, the orphanage had tightened up security to prevent runaways. All the doors and windows were locked heavily, and it wouldn't be at all easy to get out. Even if another group escape was planned, the success rate would be very low. 3 escaped and 1 was caught before. Maybe 2 would be caught next time. No, maybe everyone would be. If I could, I'd want to escape. But the House of Love and Mercy is so far away. The bridge is long, too. We'll all be caught before we get there. Besides, we can't even go outside. Everything's locked up. There were locks all over the orphanage. To escape, you need a key for both the inside and the outside, and after the lights were turned off, even each section of the hallway was individually locked. Make no mistake, this was a prison. According to the rumors, orphanages receive government funding depending on the number of children in the house. So if anyone escapes, they lose money. Also, if we were to expose the conditions at the orphanage, they would end up being inspected and things would get complicated for them. That was why they were so intent on keeping us locked up. Sure, if there was a chance I would want to escape, but realistically, there's no way we could. Every door is locked. Well, did you know? The hen house in the courtyard uses the same key as the door to the back stairs. Eh? Really? Shh. Eriko shushed us. Sometimes mass-produced locks take the same key. Of course, most places use different types of locks so that this won't happen. But the staff at the orphanage must have overlooked it. So there were 2 locks that used the same key at the orphanage. However, most of us never had a chance to even touch the keys. But there were a few exceptions. One of those was the hen house. Each room group took turns taking care of different chores. If your group was assigned to clean the hen house, you'd have to get the key to it from the teacher's office. You were supposed to return the key immediately after you were done. But while taking care of the hen house, the key was in the children's hands. While the staff would occasionally come around to check, they couldn't keep an eye on us forever. Eriko-chan, you aren't thinking about using that key, are you? Well, it's not. It's too dangerous. Of course it's dangerous if there's only one of us. But it's different if we're in a group. Wait, why? Do you know why only 1 kid was caught the last time they tried to escape? The other 3 kicked him down while they were about to get caught. They were desperate, and so to escape as a group, they did something to increase the chance of success. That was why only 1 of them was caught. What did they do? They scattered as they ran. They dashed in different directions. They waited until the day when there was only a few people working at the orphanage, and ran this way and that. And so, although all depended on luck, it would increase the chance of success for sure. On your own, you'd probably have no hope, but if the staff were to chase after other children, then your own chance of escaping successfully would increase. In other words, Eriko was inviting us to escape with her. The more children joined, the more each of our chances would increase. But among us, there were children who tattled to the staff for their own benefit, so she had to be very careful about who she talked to. Eriko must have trusted us a lot. Eriko, me, Tomomi, and Kikuko. 4 children. Do any of you want to stay here a day longer? The 3 of us shook our heads. But at the same time, we couldn't agree to escape with her either. Of course we don't want to stay here a day longer, or even an hour longer. Even if we did exactly the same thing as we did yesterday, we might get yelled at tomorrow. I can't stand this anymore. I can't stand living in a fear of what to do and what not to do so I won't be yelled at. We all feel the same way. We could endure strict rules, but it was almost impossible to endure vague ones. It wasn't too much of a stretch to say that the rules depended on the mood of the staff. This is okay. That isn't okay. Such borderline rules change daily. And if we were to say anything about that, we would be treated horribly for it. I'll escape, even if I have to do it alone. Like I said, the more people that join, the better our chance. Think about it. If they find out about this henhouse key trick, they're sure to change the lock on the back door. In other words, we only have one chance. So even if you regret not joining in later, it'll be too late. But, oh, I'm scared. I'm scared too. If we get caught, we'll be killed. Tomomi and Kikuko weren't the only ones who felt afraid. The fear was perfectly understandable, because all of a sudden, the fear of the punishment that would follow had become very realistic. I'm sure Eriko felt the same way too, but her courage was suppressing her fear. And because of that, she shared her idea with us. So, do you plan to stay here forever? No way. I know you're scared, but this is the only chance we have. You have to be brave just this once. What about you, Miyoko? Don't you want to go with me? Unlike Tomomi and Kikuko, I wasn't trembling that much. Like, Miyoko. I thought I was watching Takano. Miyu? Of course, I was scared in my own way, but compared to the other two, I must have appeared rather calm. Can we really escape? Of course, Eriko couldn't guarantee our success, but I had to ask her anyway. There's no guarantee, but if you join me, I'll have a better chance of escaping than trying to run on my own. Of course, the same goes for you, too. Eriko gave a calculated reason, but I'm sure she just wanted a friend to agree with her. That was probably more important to her than increasing her chances to escape. Tomomi, Kikuko, if you're too scared, then I won't force you. Miyoko and I will escape ourselves. 2 is enough. Well. Eriko rushed the two to make up their minds. It almost looked cold, but that was her way of mustering their courage. Because it was very possible that, regardless of the outcome of our escape attempt, as our roommates, those two would be held responsible. It's not like we'll do it tomorrow. Our turn to take care of the hen houses is in a week. We'll wait for the perfect time to do it. If we don't feel that it's safe, then we'll wait until our next turn. We'll be very careful. The rotation of the staff and the timing were important, but we also each had to know the way to the House of Love and Mercy. We were planning to split up, so we had to know the area. I made up my mind. Okay, I'm coming with you. Let's time our escape very carefully, okay? Of course. We'll be killed if we get caught. I don't want to die. I'll come too. Me too. Tomomi and Kikuko agreed, and so we all decided to escape as a group. We waited for the perfect opportunity. We waited for the day where only a few staff members were at the orphanage, and we decided to let God take care of the rest. It's open. Maybe it was the way I did it. Eriko tried to open the lock several times without success, but I got it open on the first attempt. The back door opened slowly, and we felt a cool breeze. This wasn't the world of freedom just yet. In fact, it was the exact opposite. If the staff were to find out we were here, we would be in big trouble. It was a world of danger. But unless we went through that dangerous world, we wouldn't be able to go any further. Okay, let's go. I think Eriko wanted to say that. We were planning to leave with that as our cue. But what we heard instead wasn't Eriko's voice. What are you kids doing there? We started to run. It was raining. We all got soaked immediately and our clothes stuck to our skin. While that would normally be very uncomfortable, we couldn't even stop to think about that. We could only keep running in the rain. We were dashing on gravel, but it felt more like trudging through a muddy rice field. My feet kept sinking and I couldn't pull them up. I was frustrated because no matter how fast I tried to run, I wasn't gaining any speed. I felt a sense of urgency. I heard someone yelling escape behind me, and all I could do was run like crazy. Okay, everyone go in different directions. Scatter! Come on, scatter! With Eriko's cue, we all went different ways, hoping they wouldn't be coming after us. Would we be able to reunite safely at the House of Love and Mercy? All 4 of us there together, or maybe someone would be missing. No, maybe everyone else would make it, and I'd be the one who gets caught. My thoughts were interrupted by the voice of a staff member coming from behind me. Hold it! Wait! Hold it right there! The staff members should have numbered fewer than us. So if I was lucky, they wouldn't be coming after me. Praying that the staff voices I heard in the distance weren't after me, I looked back for a moment. If I had time to turn around, why didn't I take another step forward? Why didn't I try to escape further? As I turned around, I felt a huge hand cover my face. Its pinky finger slipped into my open mouth. The hand grabbing my face shoved me into the muddy gravel. Of course, I didn't stay quiet. I fought back. And then I saw his face. It was the scariest face I had ever seen. I realized it immediately. He only wanted to capture me alive to use me as an example. And considering what would happen to me afterwards, killing me here on the spot wouldn't pose any problem, would it? Yes, he looked at me with unworldly hate, ready to end my life here and now. His pinky finger ended up touching my tongue. The indescribably nasty taste sent an icky feeling through my whole body. Ah, that's it! This is what my murder tastes like. Murderer. He was going to shove that finger down my windpipe and suffocate me. And so, in order to live, I fought back in the only way I could. Chomp. Yeah! Something warm filled my mouth. It felt like swallowing blood after a nosebleed. I spit it from my mouth and ran without turning around, leaving behind the staff member clutching his pinky finger. You little shit! Damn you! I'll kill you! I heard his roars echoing behind me. It wasn't the man that was after me. It was a beast. He had no interest in capturing me. His only goal was to see me dead. My shoes had slipped off. They weren't sneakers, so they came off easily while I was running like mad. My bare feet struck the gravel over and over. It was painful, but I didn't care. Because if I stopped, I knew what would happen to me. Tree branches cut my face, and barbed wire scratched my thighs. My feet and toes were bloody from running on gravel. The blood from the staff member's pinky finger dripped down from my mouth, staining my chin and chest. I was running for my life, with scratches and cuts all over my body. If I were to get caught, I would be killed. If my pursuer had any sense, then I would be killed after being tortured. But if he didn't, I would be killed on the spot. I don't want to be killed. I don't want to be killed. My lungs and heart were about to explode. My mind was blank from fear and lack of oxygen. I was about to lose consciousness. I might have given in, if I didn't hear the voice of the staff member coming after me. My knees were shaking. My legs wouldn't move properly. I felt like I was going to fall like a puppet without strings. But I couldn't fall. I couldn't fall just yet. It was too late. My face had hit the gravel. I felt the awful sensation of falling, and immediately after, the roar of the beast coming from behind me. Damn you! My finger! My finger! Ah! 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 I must have hit my thigh against the steering wheel when I jumped. I can feel the throbbing pain, delayed slightly. I'm sweating all over. I wiped the sweat on my forehead and put my hand on my chest, only then realizing how fast my heart was beating. I rubbed my thigh. I rubbed it in a strange line. That's not where I hit the steering wheel. But I feel like this is where it hurts. I can't see a scary beast in the moonlit car. I have my shoes on, and I'm not covered in blood. My toes are fine, too. Someone knocked on the window, startling me. Major, it's time. Oh, thank you. I wanted to take a nap, so I told him to come wake me up in an hour. Maybe an hour was too long. Too long a nap actually makes you tired. I put my seat back up and got out of the car. The cool breeze feels good on my skin. I only see the moon. There's nothing else to see on this mountain trail. My car and a command vehicle disguised as a trailer are parked on the side of the street. I can still feel that bad taste in my mouth. I spat it out on the side of the street. But even that couldn't get rid of it. The taste of blood, saliva, and rain. Sweat from my forehead and raindrops got into my mouth. But I couldn't swallow, so I ended up drooling. That sensation around my lips brought back memories, and I tried to wipe my mouth. Whew. Maybe I'm nervous. That's why I had such a bad dream. I think there's a coffee machine in the command vehicle. An unpleasant cup of coffee will wake me up. So, has anything happened yet? No, not yet. We just got Gifu's scheduled check-in. Everything is okay over there. I see. Hey, could someone make me a cup of coffee? Sure. Cream and sugar? Just cream, please. Ah, no. Please put in some sugar, too. I still have a bad taste in my mouth. The feeling of biting and crushing his little finger and his filthy blood filling my mouth. I'm sure a sweeter cup of coffee will wash down that bad taste and also wake me up from my nightmare completely. So what day is this in the present? As usual, first chapter is pretty quick. Wait. Oh. There weren't any tips. No tips. Okay. Whoops. Banquet to back end. Over. One more speaker, then the toast starts. Are you ready? This is the back end. We're ready. We can't hear anything from inside, so please give us a cue when the speech is wrapping up. Listen up. 10 bottles of beer per table. Make sure to deliver them to your area smoothly. Young hotel workers dressed smartly in bow ties pulled bottle after bottle out of the beer cases, preparing for the toast. They waited for their cue to serve the drinks while listening through the intercom. At a normal party, they could put bottles of beer on the table ahead of time, but if there was a lecture before the party, then they couldn't. Guests don't mind sushi going dry due to a long speech, but they don't like seeing their tables get wet with condensation with the bottles of beer. And more than anything, they certainly don't want to drink warm beer. That's why beer has to be served right before a toast. However, there's always a speech before a toast, and usually a long one. Especially at a big party like this, there are lots of guests that give speeches, so it's extremely difficult to know when to serve. For that reason, the bottles end up sitting outside by the banquet room, and people end up drinking warm beer anyway. There were several dozen tables with white tablecloths on them in the banquet room. Approximately 8 people were sitting at each table, so there were at least a few hundred people in the room. The banquet room was filled with excitement. There were many plates with many different kinds of food on each table. A sushi platter, a sashimi platter, a fruits platter. Also along the wall there were cooks ready to serve fresh sashimi. All the guests appeared to be well-mannered gentlemen, and clearly were notable people in various different fields. The huge and beautiful chandelier above them clearly indicated that this hotel held a good status. Good enough for these famous people. An elderly gentleman was giving a lengthy speech on the stage before making a toast. Usually people don't like such long speeches, especially if it's before a toast. But the guests occasionally shouted, "Yes, yes," and sometimes gave him loud applause, filling the room with their fervor. Well, maybe fervor was a pleasant way to put it. It was probably more accurate to say their excitement was bizarre. Which country would actually teach people not to show respect towards their own flag? There are no others. It's happening only in Japan. That's right, that's right. It's forcing people to respect their national flag and anthem in obstruction of their freedom. That's a foolish idea. Listen, love for one's national flag and anthem comes naturally to all. To know ourselves, to know our culture, to understand our history and our country itself. Those are the things that make you realize that you are a Japanese citizen, that make you understand the part that you play as a citizen of this country. And the feeling you get from that is love towards your own country. However, those anti-Japan teachers are proclaiming that it's militaristic brainwashing. And it's true. Those stupid claims are wrong. What are those people doing anyway? They're teaching our children to hate being Japanese. They're the ones brainwashing them with this self-destructive education. They're teaching our children that Japan should be ashamed of itself. That should be ashamed of being Japanese. Forget who you are and deny your country. That's what they're teaching them. These innocent children listen and believe to such nonsense. Of course they do. They go to school to learn things, right? If their teachers teach them that, of course the children believe it. Can you believe such corruption exists? We must do something about this country's education now, no matter what it takes. The sound of applause filled the banquet room. All the gentlemen agreed and expressed that they felt the same way by cheering him on. After that, a gentleman wearing a cloth sash approached the stage. The hall welcomed him onto the stage with another round of thunderous applause. A rousing theme from a popular drama series played as he took the stage, but it was entirely unnecessary before the overwhelming applause. The man's sash carried his name written in large letters, along with the name of the prefecture he was running for office in. Let me introduce to you a patriot, Kuhn. This man has served the former governor as his right-hand man as director of the office of the governor for many years, supporting the prefecture's government for a long time. Since the previous governors decided to retire, he was appointed as the next governor. Unfortunately, we have those anti-Japan teachers in our prefecture. While they proclaim freedom of education and freedom of thought, they're shamelessly forcing an anti-Japan education down on our children. They don't teach real history. They teach our children that everything was Japan's fault. They don't even mention the true purpose of the Greater East Asia Prosperity Sphere, all those who fought to save Asian peoples from Western control. They don't even talk about how many Asian countries were actually Western colonies before Japan stood up for our freedom during the war. Our country has recovered amazingly since then, yet our children don't know any of that because those teachers don't teach them. How truly, truly sad. I can't stand the fact that those anti-Japan teachers are actually teaching our children alongside those teachers who would take teaching seriously. They're insulting our educational institutions. I'll become a governor and get rid of those teachers. I will straighten out our education system and make sure our children will grow up to become decent young people who can carry on Japan's future. He, Kuhn, announced his candidacy for the next year's prefectural governmentship. We appreciate your support for him. I promise I'll straighten out Japan's education system. Thank you for your support. Again, the banquet room filled with applause. The man was receiving a standing ovation. I need to explain a bit about this banquet before you misunderstand. This is a Tokyo banquet. It wasn't the conference of a political association or a lecture by a political candidate. It's hard to believe, but this was nothing more than a meeting of a college's alumni association. Everyone should be familiar with what those are, whether it's elementary school, junior high school, or even college. Once you graduate from one of those, you normally belong to an organization of alumni. You receive invitations for reunions where you enjoy talking about the good old days. However, there are many different types of such organizations. Some are simple and some are united with much tighter bonds. Once an organization becomes united with those tight bonds, it's no longer a simple organization of alumni. Rather, it becomes a significant faction known as an alma mater clique. In Japanese society, it's traditional for graduates to form tighter bonds that go beyond the level of an organization. Also, the more superior the alma mater, the stronger that tendency holds true. The Imperial University, one of the best universities in the country, is famous for the deep bonds its graduates form. Why do superior people like to bond? It may be because they take pride in being superior. But more than that, maintaining connections is the most significant reason. All Imperial University graduates are elites in their respective fields. They are likely to succeed and become important people. When they do, the unity of their alumni association gains immeasurable meaning. In fact, even today, the Imperial University graduates maintain their tight academic clique, and they hold great influence throughout many different fields. They interact with other universities as well, so the graduates' bonds are extremely tight, even today. Additionally, while Imperial University usually refers to the University of Tokyo, sometimes it's used to mean all 7 major universities in Japan. They're located in Tokyo, Kyoto, Tohoku, Kyushu, Hokkaido, Osaka, and Nagoya. They're all great schools. There happens to be an organization of alumni that includes all of those 7 universities. The elderly gentlemen in this banquet room were each from one of those organizations. However, not every graduate would get an invitation here automatically. It's a society of select gentlemen, and in order to become a member, one must first fulfill several conditions, such as recommendation from an existing member, contribution to the society, possession of status, and so forth. Therefore, all the members are important people from different fields, and obviously the power of this organization is of a political nature. But there's one more very important criterion one has to meet to join. Strong patriotism, a heart that longs to contribute to Japan and its rebirth. As a result, this organization has become extremely nationalistic. Up on the stage, the candidate for the prefectural governorship was still talking passionately, and among those elderly gentlemen in the crowd, Takano can be found. Takano seemed used to this kind of conference, and seemed unsurprised at anything that was said, but at the same time she looked rather fed up with it. As she was in attendance, she must have been one of their members, which meant she possessed not only an extremely excellent academic background, but that the older gentleman here had acknowledged her equivalent contributions to society, and that she possessed strong patriotism. However, her academic background was the only qualification she had met to join. She was only able to join as a special case because of her connections. She didn't even hold prejudiced ideas like the other members did. So, why was she here today? Probably because of the same reason that the man giving a speech up on stage. The man on the stage didn't actually have prejudiced ideas, much like Takano. He only prepared a speech that he knew the guests would like. Politicians only want votes. Each and every person has a vote, but appealing to each one of them takes too long. So the most efficient way is to appeal to organizations with a unified idea and a unified will. In other words, this man was giving this speech so he can garner support from those powerful people. The elderly gentlemen in the banquet room will then do their best to support him, since he appears to share their ideals. They can offer many different kinds of expediency, support, and assistance. To an outrageous degree, I might add. If the day's event continued in the same way, the organization would likely decide to officially support him. They'll probably give him a great deal of financial aid. They'll assist him in different ways as well. Of course, the man on the stage won't be the only one gaining something. When he wins the election and becomes governor next year, the organization will welcome the governor as a new member and gain even more political influence. And eventually, the organization will become so powerful that nobody can ignore it. Those of you reading this right now probably get the sense that they're no mere alumni association. You'd be absolutely right. After reaching this level, they were a fine syndicate. No, they would be a secret society if the group wasn't so open about its activities. Now, I'm sure some of you readers are brushing this off, thinking there's no way such a suspicious organization could exist in Japan. But everything I've explained is entirely true. There are several such influential groups and organizations within our society, and you need to understand they hold powerful political clout and influence our national policies. Some are alma mater cliques like the one I've described above. Others are scientific societies serving different parties, industrial groups, advisory committees, religious organizations, community service groups, and so forth. Also, there are right wings and left wings, the hawk and the dove. I won't go listing their specific names here, yet you've probably read them every now and then in your average newspaper. In Japan, the terms for such forces aren't very common. Most of you readers probably think of suspicious organizations wearing white hoods when you hear the phrase secret society and laugh it off. But unfortunately, that's a huge mistake. In America, where there's far more territory and citizens, there's way more groups like that, and they possess such vast influence that ignoring them is impossible. So the terms they use for such forces doesn't apply to those on the scale of this syndicate. Sometimes people say that such groups have more power than the White House, and they are referred to as the shadow government. Even here in Japan, we had a shadow government before the war, our Zaibatsu. After we lost the war, the GHQ dismantled those blocks But 40 years have passed since then. There's no guarantee our country hasn't given birth to another shadow government, given how good we are at collusion, groundwork, and backroom deals. Mio Takano was, in fact, attending a conference of such shadow government. I'm still curious if Mio was one of the 4 kids then. It might appear to be a guest house at a huge golf course. There were no golfers in sight, but by appearances, that must be it. But appearances can be deceiving. Secret society. This wasn't a golf course, but a huge backyard. The guest house was, in fact, a very stylish mansion. Normal people would be surprised to learn that this was a private residence. The interior of the building was as lavish as the exterior. There were beautiful carpets on every floor, expensive-looking decorations on the wall, and expensive-looking bottles of alcohol on the shelves. That's the kind of room Takano could be seen in. There was a knock at the door, and an old man entered in a wheelchair, and a young woman pushing it entered. As Takano stood up to bow, the old man stopped her by raising his right hand. No, you don't need to stand up. Long time no see. I've been telling you to come see me any time, but you never do. It's great to see you, Koizumi-sensei. The old man sat down on the sofa with assistance from the woman, who was very old. His face was covered in wrinkles, and he could hardly do anything on his own. Even so, he still held a great deal of power and influence. Oh my, you haven't changed a bit, have you? I can see lipstick on your neck. Oh, is that right? Good grief, how embarrassing. There was no lipstick on his neck. The woman who was helping him with his wheelchair was too beautiful to be a mere helper, so Takano had suspected something. As it turned out, her guess was correct. Although he was so old that he could die the next day, he wanted to stay sexually active until the very end. Even the Grim Reaper would think that's just absurd. Mio-chan, you've become quite beautiful yourself. You're not a little girl anymore, eh? Oh, stop. If you really think that way, why did you try to touch my bottom, What have you got to lose from having an old guy like me touch your butt? I'm sure you have plenty of chances to touch a softer butt, don't you? Takano and the old man enjoyed a tasteless conversation. They had clearly known each other a long time, very close. The young woman came back in to serve tea. After she left, the old man started to speak. Anyway, I'm so proud of you, Mio-chan. I'm sure your grandfather in heaven is proud of you, too. I hope so. But I'm not even close to approaching the level of my grandfather's great work. Takano-kun was unlucky in many different ways. The era he lived in. If he lived in a different era, I'm sure he would have finished his research. But he lived in that era, and ironically, that was why he noticed the existence of the Hinamizawa syndrome. The world today is in the nuclear era, with America and the Soviet Union glaring at each other over mounds of nuclear stockpiles. It takes nukes to have authority as a major power. Yet we've forever abandoned our nukes thanks to our 3 anti-nuclear principles. In this age, we're now a nation without nukes. How deplorable. In the middle of the 20th century, despite rising tensions between East and West, there was a temporary peace known as the Cold War, brought by a balance of nukes pointed at each other. Permanent memberships in the United Nations were monopolized by nations with nuclear arms. This secured their predominance with nukes, bound the world with nuclear non-proliferation treaties, eternally banning non-nuclear nations from the world stage. For Japan to become a nation that can compete with the world, it must develop nuclear arms, or something as powerful. That's what some people believed, at least. Realistically, Japan will never arm itself with nuclear weapons. I know. The citizens wouldn't accept it. Even if the government ignored their opinions and armed itself with nuclear weapons, it wouldn't work. By abandoning nuclear weaponry, Japan gained the deterrent power of the United States. Though some people thought the only way for Japan to become equal to the United States would be to get nuclear arms of their own. But realistically, that was impossible. Even if Japan armed itself with nuclear weapons, that wouldn't automatically let Japan join the great powers. Takano and the old man discussed the balance of nuclear power in the world. Eventually, the sound of the cuckoo clock reminded them to return to the main subject at hand. The old man pointed to to the attache case that had been sitting next to Takano. Takano nodded once, opened it up, and removed the contents. There were brand new bills packed in it. How much was actually in there? A bundle of brand new million-yen bills is 1 centimeter, so there must have been at least one enough to make up 8 digits. There were also 2 more attache cases by her side. However, neither Takano nor the old man were surprised at all. Takano closed the attache case and bowed. Thank you very much, Koizumi-sensei. I'll never forget about this. Money should be handled by younger people. I can't take it to heaven with me. I just hope this will be of assistance to you. Use it wisely. Of course I will. I'll use this money only to make my grandfather's dream come true. I envy Takano-kun. What a wonderful grandchild he has, Grundiful. I'm sure he's bragging about you up there. I haven't done anything yet. I'll have earned this praise when I complete my grandfather's work. I'm so jealous. My boys are no good. They're only interested in making money. What really matters is how the money is spent. How you contribute to the country is what's most important. That's how you repay your debt to it, you know? Oh, so are you saying that treating all those lovers so lavishly is also a way of repaying your country? Of course. When they shop, the country makes money. Money goes around, you see? However, those lovers would probably end up buying some foreign goods. Things probably don't work quite the way this old man thinks they do. Takano chuckled to herself. But the money I give to those women and the money I give to you are completely different. I know that very well. You worked very hard. You've retained trust and support from so many people. This is the first time I've mentioned it, but Hariyama-kun and Mochizuki-kun both weren't sure about you because of your age at first. That's why I'm acknowledging your efforts. That's why I'm giving you this money. I understand. Also, for me to give you this money means that I recognize you as the official successor of Takano-kun's research. Thank you very much. Thank you for believing in me. I truly appreciate it. No, don't mention it. This research is Takano-kun's, and yours too. He wouldn't want anyone else to take over. So, thanks to all of your effort, I didn't have to spend too much time convincing the other old folks. Completing my grandfather's research is the least I could do for him. I won't begrudge any efforts towards that aim. Takano smiled as she remembered everything she had to go through to get to this point. It went without saying, but the old men around Takano saw her as someone from their grandchildren's generation, or maybe even younger. Just how much trouble did Takano have to endure in order to gain the trust of those with such a large generation gap? It was hard to describe to those who couldn't even imagine her trouble. But Takano earned it. She gathered allies, drove away enemies, garnered support, and forced them to recognize her. She spent a long time establishing trust and rising to a status that the old men would welcome. Which was all the more reason this meeting was a reward for her many days of hardship. Now that she officially had a powerful influence backing her, she could spread her wings and see the completion of her grandfather's unfinished research. Well, now that you're officially continuing Takano-kun's research, there's something I need to tell you, Mio-chan. What is it? I'm listening. The old man paused and pulled an expensive cigarette from the cigarette holder on the table. Takano lit it up for him. She didn't smoke herself, but knowing that the old man did, she kept a lighter in her pocket. The constant build-up of little gestures like that were how she gained the trust she held today. Takano-kun noticed the Hinamizawa syndrome in Manchuria, not Japan. Yes, according to my grandfather's journal, around Showa 15, he learned that many soldiers sent from Hinamizawa to the Kwantan army expressed terminal symptoms, which led him to surmise that an unknown infectious parasite dwelled in Hinamizawa. Under the harsh conditions of war, people sometimes lost their minds. In those conditions, those who were sent to a far-off battlefield from Hinamizawa spent their days under duress, and occasionally they exhibited terminal symptoms, hallucinated, and caused twisted incidents. Yet that all occurred in the extensive chaos of the battlefield. Every incident was handled separately, and no one suspected there was an underlying cause, much like the curse. At the time, Takuma-kun was working as a military physician in the Kwantung Army. He was researching the prevention of different infectious diseases, and one day he noticed that several incidents of deranged behavior were occurring among soldiers from the same hometown. He hypothesized that these symptoms were unique to those from Hinamizawa, and began his own personal research. He hired soldiers from Hinamizawa as workers in his research center and studied them there. Then he learned of the unique Hinamizawa faith in Oyasho-sama, and he was convinced that he found an infectious parasite with unique properties. Some may wonder how he could be so certain that these symptoms were caused by unusual parasites. At the beginning of the 20th century, German doctors proved that some unknown diseases were caused by bacteria and parasites. Be right back. At the time, it wasn't too far of a jump to assume that unknown pathogens could be behind unknown diseases. There you go. For instance, in modern times, it's been revealed that beriberi is caused by vitamin B1 deficiency. What is beriberi? Let me check this. What is it? Lack of B1. I just gotta send this to someone. In modern times, it's been revealed that beriberi is caused by B1 deficiency. By the start of the 20th century, many loudly proclaimed that it was the work of an unidentified pathogen. Yes, my grandfather predicted that his research would be valuable to the army, so he asked for a budget, but they just laughed at him. As a researcher, her grandfather was very talented and passionate, but when it came to gaining the aid of political powers, he simply struck out. Gotta open my next water bottle. Much better. No, the possible existence of a parasite that infected the human brain and controlled emotions. Even though he made the remarkable achievement of discovering a mystery that no one had explained before him, he was unable to convince others of that achievement, and spent his life alone, unable to garner support, and unable to achieve proper recognition for his achievement. Independent research has its limit: talented people, funding, and backup. A research project can be successful only if all those things are present. Takano had noticed her grandfather's mistakes, and that was why she did everything she could to obtain all of that. The military at the time was hoping for a low-cost, immediate-acting weapon. While Takano-kun's research was extremely intriguing, it didn't meet the military's expectations. But I heard you were the only one who understood my grandfather's research, weren't you? In his journal, he calls you his best friend. We came from the same hometown. It was a miracle to run into someone from the same town on such a distant battlefield. Although we weren't close in age, we became very good friends. So we talked a lot. Many times he told me his research would be revolutionary and asked to lay the groundwork to secure funding for full-scale research. I read in his journal that you talked to many different people about his research. Unfortunately, its value was never recognized, but I'm sure your support meant a lot to him. But I was never able to really do anything for him. That's why I want to help you, Mio-chan. Helping you like this is like atoning for my mistakes. Thank you very much. He was lucky to have you as his best friend. If only there were more understanding people like you in the military's upper echelon. It's very regrettable to think that my grandfather's life might have been different. The old man closed his eyes and paused for a moment. Shortly after that, he looked into the distance and spoke. Actually, that isn't true at all. The higher-ups were interested in Takano-kun's discovery. What? I've never heard that before. Then why didn't they support his research? Something came up, and they couldn't let him look into Hinamizawa syndrome. Only a few of the top brass and myself knew the reason. Now that all but myself has passed, I think I should tell you, Mio-chan, since you're carrying on his work. What came up? What was it? Takano had believed until this day that her grandfather's research was ridiculed by everyone, which was the reason why it had never gained any recognition. Her grandfather had asked about it. Her grandfather had asked the military for funding so he could uncover the secret of Hinamizawa syndrome during the war. But just like the old man had said earlier, the military wanted an instant-acting weapon. That was why they weren't interested in his research. That's what she had believed. As it turned out, the military had actually shown an interest after all. Before I go on, I need to explain about the Kwantung Army in Manchuria at the time. While the Kwantung Army was stationed in Manchuria, opinions were divided on whether to advance our forces north or south. At the time, Japan had troops in Manchuria, but opinions were divided on advancing north to deter the Soviet Union, or advancing south to expand our territory and secure resources. With the Soviet Union and its predecessor, Russia, being a landlocked frozen nation, they had longed for an ice-free port that wouldn't freeze over in winter. They had made numerous attempts to expand their territory southward, too. Those expansionist policies were said to be a cause of the Russo-Japanese War. In the history books, it said that Japan won the Russo-Japanese War, but was actually a draw ending in peace signed at the Treaty of Portsmouth. Both sides had simply set aside their spears after mutually exhausting their forces. It wasn't like Russia capitulated and offered a complete surrender. As a result, the perception of the Russian threat continued to smolder. Later, the Russian Empire was overthrown by a revolution, but Japan was unable to shake the threat that the new Soviet Union would advance south. According to the history books, Japan went south. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and abandoned the northern advance. As a result, when the Great Patriotic War began, the Soviet Union was able to pressure on their German front by pouring in their eastern forces. Though the Germans had managed to lay siege to Moscow, the Soviets launched a massive counteroffensive that reversed the tides of war. Even with the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact, the Soviets couldn't tell if Japan would attack them at some point. Because of that threat, the Soviets had to leave some forces in the Far East, and they weren't able to devote enough troops to the German front. For starters, the Soviets had forged the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact too. Yet Germany broke the treaty and attacked the Soviet Union. To make matters worse, Japan and Germany had forged a military alliance. With all those factors in play, the Soviets naturally couldn't trust Japan to uphold their neutrality pact. Ironically, the Soviet Union was the one who broke the pact, but I won't go into that now. Exactly. Hitler signed the Tripartite Pact because he expected Japan to keep the Soviets' other front in check. But ultimately, Japan abandoned the North. With the superior German offensive, many supported the idea of waiting and watching it play out. They believed that even if we did advance north, it would be after Germany conquered Moscow. However, that plan was exposed to Sorge, and the Soviets transferred their heavy tanks from their Far East border to the German front. That secured Germany's defeat at Moscow. The Germans began seeing a string of defeats, starting with the Battle of Kursk. It was a turning point in history, huh? During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was recognized as a global power, but at least in Showa 15, the Kwantung Army didn't think it was a particular threat. Japan had earned a victory with the Russo-Japanese War, and they took the new Soviet Union government lightly, assuming it wouldn't be stable after overthrowing the Russian Empire. That underestimation was corrected after the Mohnhan incident in Showa 16. After several fierce short-term battles with the Soviet Union's advanced mechanized corps that led to great losses, the Kwantung Army realized they shouldn't fight the Soviets, and that inclined Japan towards the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact. But at the very least, up until the incident, the Kwantung Army was strongly conscious of the Soviets and divided on advancing north or south. Thanks to that, there were also voices advising caution, suggesting we avoid all-out war with China in order to shore up our forces against the Soviets. But the Sino-Japanese War broke out after the Marco Polo Bridge incident. July Showa 12. The Japanese and Chinese armies were staring at each other across the Lugo Bridge in Beijing. It was the middle of the night on July 7th. The Chinese army fired on the Japanese army in training, and then engaged in combat. This triggered the long Sino-Japanese War. Yes, according to historical records, that incident triggered the Sino-Japanese War, but with opinions divided over advancing north or south, the army was equally divided over a full-scale confrontation with China. No, in fact, we even received orders from General Staff Headquarters to resolve the matter quietly before the incident grew much bigger. So those supporting the northern advance wanted to settle the Battle of Lugo Bridge quietly, insisting that conflict with China was pointless in light of their anti-Soviet strategy. However, those on the mainland supporting the southern advance used this incident as cause to dispatch more troops to China. They enacted hard policies against China, and thus the Marco Polo Bridge incident became the trigger for Japan and China to enter all-out war. After that and their bitter struggles in the Nomonhan incident, Japan greatly revised their Soviet strategy. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and secured the route for their sudden advance. The Sino-Japanese War got worse and worse. If the Marco Polo Bridge incident hadn't happened, it's possible that history would have gone very differently. Maybe we would have ended up in a war with them anyway. However, if the South faction didn't get that chance, the military authorities would have kept restraining the Soviet Union, and the Soviets would have had to divide their forces between East and West. And maybe Germany could have invaded Moscow. Then Japan could have gone to Siberia. The map could have been very different today. Germany wouldn't necessarily have won the war if it had succeeded in taking Moscow. England was keeping its strength on the other side of Dover Strait, after all, and the United States was poised to enter the conflict. Besides, Napoleon once occupied Moscow, but in the end, he couldn't beat their winter and had to withdraw. It's one of those ifs, huh? The Axis might have won the war. Yes, it's possible that the gunshot from the Marco Polo Bridge incident changed the tide of history. Both sides had different opinions of who fired the shot, right? According to the Japanese side, Chinese soldier fired a shot at a Japanese soldier who got too close to the Chinese camp. However, the Chinese side claimed the shot was a conspiracy invented by the Japanese military. But the shot was fired. Even though nobody knew who actually pulled the trigger, it sparked the Sino-Japanese War. Yes, that's what the history books say. But Koizumi-sensei, what does that have to do with my grandfather? In the Marco Polo Bridge incident, a shot was fired at a unit that was training in the middle of the night. Everyone was summoned for a roll call. They were missing one soldier. This soldier came back later, and it was said that he was sent back as a messenger and got too close to the Chinese camp. By the way, did you know that soldier was from Hinamizawa? Eh? Really? When Takano-kun was talking about Hinamizawa syndrome, he said that soldiers from Hinamizawa could suddenly fall into a deranged state. And we realized that the soldier from the Marco Polo Bridge incident was in fact from Hinamizawa. Then what about the first shot fired? I don't know the truth, but I think it's possible that a soldier in the terminal stage of Hinamizawa syndrome fired the shot. That soldier was killed in the incident. Since there was no record of it, nobody knows exactly how he died. The Japanese side claimed that the Chinese army had fired at them, and negotiated with that in mind. Just a scant few days after the incident, Japan demanded an apology from the Chinese, and as a show of force, dispatched 3 divisions of reinforcements. The Chinese side was, of course, opposed to that. The situation escalated at once. If research into Hinamizawa syndrome continued, the higher-ups thought it would negatively influence the Japanese army's claims. So, in order to avoid the risk of traversing that political gray zone, they rejected Takano-kun's research. So, because of that, they refused to even consider my grandfather's research long after the war ended too? Yes, that's exactly it. The war is over now, but there are still some conflicts there regarding historical recognition. Even if Takano-kun didn't mean for it to happen, if his research into Hinamizawa syndrome became public, it might cause a resurgence of quarrels over the long-ended war. Certain authorities were afraid of that, so they made sure his research was ignored even after the war. I was long warned not to aid him anyway myself. Takano tried to remain calm, but she couldn't stop herself from grimacing. She had just found out the real reason why her grandfather's research had been ignored. It was because of secret maneuvers by political masterminds. If those masterminds feared it so much, ironically, that meant they acknowledged the importance of his research. Takano was saddened and frustrated to no end by her grandfather's only life. However, they're all dead now. I'm the only one who knows about this. If Takano-kun was still alive, I was going to apologize to him and give him my unconditional support. But he's no longer around. That's why I'm apologizing to you and offering to give you my full support instead. Are you sure? Wouldn't research into the Hinamizawa syndrome dredge up those same subjects again? It's different now. Besides, research into the Hinamizawa syndrome may produce more than a mere local disease. Depending on your research, post-war Japan may gain a trump card that makes it a world power once more. So, the tides and times have changed then. That's right. Unfortunately, Takano-kun didn't live long enough to see that tide change. But he has you to continue his research. So, as long as I'm alive, I'll give you my full support. I promised to help Takano-kun, but because of various things, I couldn't do anything. So I want to make up for that as long as I'm alive. I think that's the least I can do for the man who called me his best friend. Koizumi-sensei, thank you so much. Oh, don't mention it. I'm glad I was able to tell you everything before I died. Anyway, until I'm gone, I'll make sure you get everything you need, okay? So if anything comes up, be sure to let me know. I'll do anything for you. Takano couldn't even imagine what kind of bond this old man and her grandfather had between them. But thanks to that bond, Takano was able to gain a powerful supporter. Tears welled up in Takano's eyes as she gave him an emotional look, but in her mind, she was practically dancing at the promise of the old man's full support. The old man and Takano both bowed at the same time to show each other their appreciation. Once that was done, the old man became a little more serious. After that far too lengthy preamble, he finally said what he really wanted to tell her. So there you have it. This is what I wanted to say. The Hinamizawa syndrome has the potential power to make history. It may even twist the fate of our country. So keep that in mind and be careful with your research. And it became nighttime. After the proprietor finished serving the food, she bowed and left. The room was very tastefully put together, reminding them of a tea ceremony room. While it was sparsely decorated, quite a bit of money had obviously gone into it. This was a very famous Japanese restaurant, where many high-up officials and other important people held secret meetings. Takano was there, accompanied by about 5 gentlemen. She was sitting slightly farther away from the men. They were clearly in a much more important position than she was. One of the men, wearing an expensive double-breasted suit, told Takano not to be so nervous. Oh, is this going to introduce Tomitake? Please relax, Takano-san. What we read is very interesting to us. I can't believe this research was just sitting there for dozens of years. It is surprising. I thought most of the research on EC weapons the Japanese military conducted during the war failed to bear fruit, and nothing was left after the U.S. military confiscating the fundamental research. I heard this research was barely even glanced at by the top brass. I see. So that's why nobody knew about it and GHQ didn't investigate it. In that sense, at least it was truly fortunate. Interesting that Dr. Takano's research would be succeeded by a different Takano-san. I suppose that's fate. It's like the deceased is using your body to complete his life's work. Maybe that's true. I feel a mysterious connection to him, too. Takano adored Takano Hifumi and called him grandfather, but she hasn't revealed that relationship to others. Oh. She realized it would be beneficial for people to think she was involving personal feelings in her continuing his research. So publicly, she once had exchanges with Takano Hifumi, and after his death, discovered his research documents with his remains and chose to carry it on. At least that's how the story went. Well then, what do you think? The defense agency was very interested. One moment again. Alright, back again. Oh, this long. Really? The defense agency was very interested. According to Nakagawa-kun, the defense agency's Technical Research and Development Institute showed great interest. They offered to sponsor the research, too. Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations, Takano-san. Thank you very much. Here's what they said. There's a research council for next-generation deterrence being led by experts from several different ministries. One of those is called the Alphabet Project. Have you heard of it, Takano-san? There was no way she would know about something like that. But it was very possible for these nationalists to research something dangerous without citizens knowing about it. Society forms something like a web made of connections between people. People hold hands with other people who share the same ideas and end up knitting a net. Of course, some nets are well known, but there are some secret ones too. So there was no way of guessing just how the men at this meeting were connected. A society involving research into deterrent weapons for the next generation. The Alphabet Project. With those words, it was possible to imagine what that might entail. Deterrent weapons. That usually refers to nuclear technology. Weapons are normally used to destroy enemies. However, the general idea of deterrent weapons is very different. The assumption is that they won't actually be used against anyone. Nuclear weapons are largely used as a threat to prevent enemy invasion. Both the US and Soviets possess large stockpiles of nuclear arms, keeping each other in check. But they'll never actually use them, because if they did, there'd be a nuclear war, both countries would be destroyed. So they're like a legendary weapon you never draw. Of course, that last resort only works because both sides have nuclear weapons. If one side lacks them, then they lose all military negotiation power. In other words, nations without nukes are powerless before nuclear-armed states. That can't be true. Japan abandoned nukes and it still functions as a nation today. Or so some people may be thinking, but they're wrong. Japan abandoned nukes, but lies under the nuclear umbrella by allying itself with America. That means the nation functions thanks to America's nukes. However, that also means we must resign ourselves to forever being a vassal of America. In order for Japan to escape that and become a powerful nation equal to America, it must possess its own deterrence arms and step out of that nuclear umbrella. That society must have been put together by experts who believe in that ideal. Given that, even the name Alphabet Project makes sense. Nuclear weapons are weapons of mass destruction. However, weapons of mass destruction aren't always nuclear. They also include biological weapons and chemical weapons. Atomic, biological, chemical. The initials of these three words make up ABC. That's why weapons of mass destruction are sometimes called ABC weapons. I won't go into weapons of mass destruction that don't belong to those three categories. ABC, alphabet. In other words, Alphabet Project must be a code for research into weapons of mass destruction. As it happened, this guess of Takano's was correct. By rights, Japan should possess nuclear arms. We established ourselves as a peace-loving nation after the war. After our vast international contributions, we've been recognized as a permanent member of the UN. Yet until we possess nuclear arms, we won't be recognized as a proper nation. That's the long-held desire of post-war Japan. Exactly. However, realistically, thanks to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the major nations hold a monopoly on nukes. Worse, our domestic public opinion is growing allergic to nukes, so foreign and domestic pressures make implementing them impossible. Biological and chemical weapons are sometimes known as the poor man's nuke. Small countries that can't own nuclear weapons have already started research into that kind of weaponry. Takano-san, please don't misunderstand us, okay? The purpose of our research isn't to obtain a biological weapon. Instead, our goal is to prevent such weapons from coming into Japan from other countries. So this is research into self-defense. I want you to understand that. Yes, I'm aware of that. Takano hated this Japanese tendency to make excuses, but she didn't let it show on her face. No matter what they said, they already saw the value in using this research toward biological weaponry. However, in truth, that was just an excuse as well. If they actually wanted to research biological weapons, then it would be much faster to research diseases like smallpox and anthrax instead of an unidentified disease like Hinamizawa syndrome. So it wasn't actually correct to say the defense agency wasn't interested in it as a biological weapon. In other words, Takano needed a powerful sponsor who could back her up with funding, personnel, and a facility to conduct her research. So she used her connections and turned to the old men behind the government and economy, reaching out to each of them and getting them to forcibly pull funding out of the defense agency under the excuse of its application toward biological weaponry. That was the truth. Therefore, her project wasn't officially recognized by the Defense Agency. To be exact, the people who secretly controlled the Defense Agency were the ones who knew about it. These masterminds diverted funding from the Defense Agency to the Alphabet Project, and then they pushed for Takano's research to be a part of it. Takano gets her funding, and the influencers get to drain public funds through kickbacks. Considering that, it was doubtful that this project was generally about researching the next generation of deterrence arms. It was probably just an excuse for the masterminds to funnel money into their own pockets. Big gasp. Well, those complicated matters didn't matter to Takano. Wherever those old men and influencers were planning wasn't her business. As long as she could get the funding for her research, that was enough. Either way, Takano had found her sponsor. It was one of the biggest organizations around, too. This had always been her grandfather's dream. Takano was trying to stay calm, but she was about to jump up and down in excitement. Nakagawa-kun says that once the research gets underway, he doesn't mind buying it out. Although it's still incomplete, he definitely sees potential in it. Need some water. You're absolutely right. This research is only halfway complete. Sufficient funding, facilities, and personnel will be indispensable. About that. Here's where the negotiations start, but apparently they wish to take on this research in its entirety. I feel bad saying this, but they think the burden is too much for you to bear alone. Hearing that put quite the damper on Takano's ecstasy. I'm not trying to make money off of this. I'm working as a researcher purely out of intellectual curiosity. What I need is a sponsor, and what they seek are results. That was the relationship I had hoped to establish. Takano realized she was talking rather breathlessly, so she tried to calm herself down. Either way, they'd be backing the research. Considering they're hoping for results that merit the budget, they probably feel that Takano is still too young to handle it. I know. Hat again. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to grab another drink, and I'm going to feed him real quick. I know, I know. You've been working on this for a long time, and you don't want anyone to just grab it from you, right? I totally understand that. Of course, we've already informed them. So here's the compromise we came up with. First, we'll start your research as an offshoot of the Alphabet Project. Once you have the Board of Directors' approval, you'll be given official funding. We'll have you participate in the project as an associate researcher, and you'll take part in the research that way. If she wanted their funding, she'd have to fall under their authority, of course. So far, she had no objections. However, the Research Society has listed a few conditions in exchange for funding this project. First, as was just mentioned, is to entrust the position of lead researcher to an individual that's skilled and talented in this field of research. I hate to interject, but who would be more knowledgeable about this than me? Other than the late Dr. Takano, of course. Now. Please, calm down, Takano-san. I understand how you feel. Still, how is this any different from selling my research to this individual? This isn't what we discussed at all. Calm down, Takano-san. Those cunning old men didn't miss sight of the faint leak of anger that crossed Takano's expression. They gave evasive laughs, as if remarking how immature she still was if she let her emotions show over such a little thing. However, they weren't laughing to look down on Takano. On the contrary, they were trying to tell her to wait until the end. Of course, we'll make sure you get your way. Koizumi-sensei told me to take a good care of you. Do you think I would just ignore you after he told me that? Don't worry. Please, let me work things out. I'll make sure you'll be happy. What do you mean? You see, I get to select the person in charge. Everyone chortled except Takano. After a moment, she joined in. In other words, he meant that he would find just the right person. The defense agency had suggested finding an expert to lead the project because they didn't feel comfortable with just Takano. However, Takano's sponsor was the one tasked to find such a person. In that moment, Takano realized it. Ah, how wonderful it is to have such a powerful backer. Let me work it out. I'll find some candidates for you. All you'll have to do is pick the one you think would be the most suitable. Takano felt better after hearing that. While she wouldn't be the official head of the project, she would end up leading it from the shadows. Of course, she wasn't an expert per se. Having a partner would actually be beneficial. Give me some time to talk to the other end. I'll make sure you'll be happy with the outcome. Please, just be patient for a while. I understand. Thank you for everything. Oh, by the way, it's not just the defense agency. Nagata-kun from the Ministry of Health and Welfare is willing to help you too. He introduced me to Ito-kun from the National Institute of Infectious Diseases. He's willing to help you with equipment and other technology. Really? Thank you so much. Wow. This is a national project, isn't it? Congratulations, Takano-san. This is all because of your effort and the deceased Takano's hard work. Oh no. This is all because of Dr. Takano. I haven't done anything yet. Being humble is a good virtue. Just like Koizumi-sensei told me, you truly are a nice person, aren't you? No wonder he adores you. Anyway, they want you to join the defense agency. Luckily, you have a doctor's license, right? We'll secure your position as a medical officer of the TRDI. What? Do you mean I'll be a public servant? I wasn't expecting that. All the organizations that are involved with the Alphabet Project are public institutions. The SDF is actually interested in this research as well, and they're making strong requests to dispatch some of their personnel too. So depending on the circumstances, you may be treated as an SDF member. Well, just think of those matters as officials squabbling over jurisdiction. So to stand above those officials, you'll need your own official position. No matter what, we'll make sure you'll be happy, so please don't worry about anything. I understand. I'll let you work things out. But knowing Dr. Takano's research was once rejected by the old Japanese military, it's hard to believe that the Self-Defense Force is interested in it now. Well, that couldn't be stopped. With the war situation worsening, the Japanese military sought something with immediate effect, something that could turn the war around. I don't think they were looking down on Dr. Takano's research. That wasn't true, of course. Takano already heard that confession from the old man. She exhaled. To her, it was like the meeting in front of her was happening somewhere far away. She had longed for this day to come, and worked so hard to reach it. Finally, her grandfather and his research were attaining recognition. This was the day she had dreamed of, so she was frightened just imagining that it might be an actual dream. True joy can't be felt all at once. Oftentimes, it's a delayed reaction. Takano thought that must be exactly what she was feeling. I imagine you'll probably be given a field officer's rank. Since you'll be second in command, you'll likely be a major. That's wonderful. Major Takano, huh? My, I'm a little jealous. As a man, I wish I had a rank like that. Boy, oh boy, Major Takano, huh? Mm-hmm. A major? What does that signify? Well, it's reasonably high in the rank system of the self-defense forces. It's like a sub-manager at a company, I guess. That'll be your rank once the project gets underway. It's equivalent to a lieutenant commander in the old Japanese military. What a coincidence. Dr. Takano was also a lieutenant commander in the old military. Takano remembered suddenly. They were right. Her grandfather had been a lieutenant commander in the Japanese military. Everything she had done until today was so she could continue her grandfather's research. Now everything had fallen into place. She had even been granted the same rank as her grandfather. She had always believed that succeeding his research would be proof that they had a bond tighter than blood. And now she would even be the same rank as him. This is fate, Takano thought. Maybe this is even a message from Grandpa? Yes, it must have been a shout of encouragement from heaven. It was proof that she inherited not only his research, but his will as well. Takano couldn't help but feel a sense of destiny for attaining the rank of major. Grandpa, I'm finally here. Nobody else could hear her say that, but her grandfather in heaven could. That's what Takano believed. She had only come so far. There were still a lot of things to do for this research to be recognized as a great work. Otherwise, her grandfather won't become a god. She wouldn't become one either. You must become a god. That was in her grandfather's will. I was unable to do so. That line preceded it. It was her grandfather's dying wish. Her grandfather entrusted it to her. All of his research. A god can't be physically brought back to life. A god is made in the hearts of the people who remain alive. Her grandfather will live on in her heart. His exploits will be known to many, and all the scholars will fight to read his documents, to steal them from each other, and they will learn about Hifumi Takano, who began his research during the war. They will know that nobody understood him, and that he ended up devoting his lonely life to his research. And finally, they will extol his grand achievement. There's no new tips again either, right? Yeah. Let's keep going a bit more then. Allow me to introduce you. This is Major Takano. Major, this is Dr. Kyosuke Irie. Hello, I'm Irie. Irie seemed extremely nervous at our first meeting. He probably thought I was in charge of some suspicious organization. Please relax. Call me Takano. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. Please, have a seat. A model, lower middle-class citizen was a good way to describe Kyosuke Irie's demeanor. One could say he was the stereotypical type of person to get conveniently discarded after those crafty elders use their seniority to constantly pick on him. He certainly doesn't seem as cunning as I am. But that doesn't mean he isn't ambitious. Like me, he's a young person who dreams of accomplishing something great and leaving his name upon generations to come. While he acts humble in person like this, his articles were actually progressive as well as aggressive. This gap between the two was quite intense. I've read the data concerning this Hinamizawa syndrome. What did you think? Well, it's really quite the shock. It's very possible that this is something that steps onto the dark side of today's medicine, but I can hardly control my intellectual excitement in knowing it's a mystery that is yet to be solved. Hearing that made me chuckle. Irie is more than interested in Hinamizawa syndrome, which is good enough for me. She had been through the ringer with far too many people to reach this day. So her honed intuition could tell. She would get along well with this man. Even if he isn't useful to me, he won't cause any problems. For both me and my sponsor, he's the best person possible for the job. I was shocked too. To imagine a man of your experience and knowledge was just wasting away in the medical office without any responsibilities or work to accomplish. I have to say, that was a grave loss to the medical field. Ha ha ha, Irie laughed. He probably thought I didn't know, but I had received detailed documents on him, so I knew why he was exiled from the limelight despite his rare talent and achievements. He displayed extraordinary skill working under a neurosurgery expert, and everyone expected a bright future from him. But he was kicked out due to an ethical controversy. Irie's pet theory was that the antisocial behavior of individuals could be explained by brain disorders. He believed that no one in this world was born a villain, and that they were all just poor patients in need of treatment. He proposed that they were all proper and normal when born, yet as they matured, psychogenesis and various exogenous factors caused brain disorders that made them into villains. Therefore, what those evil people need isn't punishment, it's treatment. And if their diseases are treated, they'll become good citizens again. Oh, jeez. That manner of thinking actually fell in line with the Confucian belief of innate human goodness. According to this theory, humans are born with the capacity for altruism toward their kind, and it is only afterward that they learn and acquire cruelty. Irie believed that acquisition was the result of brain disorders. The human brain creates human thoughts. Therefore, if one becomes emotionally ill, that means their brain is ill. So if their brain gets treatment, they'll recover emotionally too. That field was called psychosurgery. It's fallen out of practice in the current Heisei era, but the surgical techniques were applauded until mid-Showa. Especially since it produced spectacular results on a chronic mental patient that was said to be incurable. The man who invented it even won a Nobel Prize. That was how revolutionary it was. Humans think. That's why they become ill. Everyone knows that's why those who overthink matters are prone to mental illness. When the organ that thinks and debates grows ill, humans deviate from social behavior. That part is called the frontal lobe. Put simply, psychosurgery is surgery performed to cut the frontal lobe. Oh jeez. This kind of surgery doesn't require removing the whole epicranium. A small hole is drilled through the cranium, and a special scalpel is inserted down to cut it. It's not a major surgery, just a technique for quickly cutting the precious frontal lobe. Indeed, it was revolutionary in its simplicity. Wasn't that called something? All the severely ill mental patients miraculously recovered, so the technique spread across the world quickly. Those with obstinate and chronic mental illnesses, the severely ill trapped in deep inescapable depression. All of those could be saved by this technique. Throughout history, humans have come up with many different religions and magic tricks to heal emotional injuries. So, needless to say, the idea of being able to treat them with a surgical technique was truly revolutionary. Irie admired psychosurgery and pushed forward in the field of surgical techniques to treat human souls. However, from the modern human rights standpoint, severing a portion of the brain simply because someone is emotionally disturbed is absolutely out of the question. People gradually started to think differently and said that psychosurgery was inhumane. The frontal lobe controls how people think, but it's also the part that makes humans act human. There were quite a few cases where that cut caused drastic, irreversible changes in the patient. There we go. A baseless happiness born from lack of thought. A change in personality. A loss of interest in everything. Major mood swings due to a lack of control over one's emotions. Some even lost part of their memories. Imagine that. Of course, some didn't even survive the surgery. As the Showa approached its 40th year, use of psychosurgery declined. Also, due to development of psychotropic medicine, the surgery was hardly performed anymore anyway. Yet, some people still believed in the idea and continued to perform the surgery and gather clinical data. They wanted people to recognize the value of the technique once again. Some of these surgeries were performed without consent. Oh, geez. One theory is that in Japan alone, there were thousands of people who woke up from general anesthesia, only to find part of their brain had been removed. Today, to perform such a surgery without a patient's consent is considered totally unethical, but it was different at the time. For one thing, the idea that doctors required prior patient consent was proliferated in the modern Heisei era. Therefore, people at the time didn't think it was that big of an issue. It was only later that people started to argue that it was inhumane. Finally, a decision was reached and the curtain closed with the rejection of psychosurgery. Later, the Japanese Society of Psychology and Neurology passed their resolution to end psychosurgery. After that, psychosurgery was banned throughout Japan and made a forbidden subject of Japanese medicine. Irie was the leading person in the field of psychosurgery. He continued to advocate its effectiveness and results. Therefore, he was treated as a war criminal who practiced inhumane medicine, and he was exiled from the public eye. However, that doesn't mean he changed his beliefs. He still believes that immoral behavior is caused by brain disorders, and the secret of treating them is, in fact, hidden in the brain. So the existence of Hinamizawa syndrome, caused by parasites living in the brain that control human emotions, actually affirms his theory. If it's alright with you, I would love to accept this position. Of course, given Irie's history, he would never turn down this offer. Despite his mild-mannered appearance, Irie was possessed of a mighty ambition. There was no way he didn't desire a chance to complete research that would prove himself to the medical society that ostracized him. I'm handing him that chance on a silver platter. Thank you very much. I knew you'd accept. We're very lucky to have an expert like you. You'll be a great help. But are you okay with me being the director? Wouldn't it be better for you to hold that position, Takuma-san? I'm just a simple doctor. Being in charge of other people is... Alright, be right back. Gotta close the door again. Don't worry. I'll give you my full support. Our sponsor wanted to pick a civilian. Besides, wouldn't you like to be called Director Irie? Oh, well, but... Irie laughed to hide his embarrassment. We're building a research center in Hinamizawa. Publicly, it'll be a clinic. So with your consent, Dr. Irie, we'd like to call it the Irie Clinic. The lord of my own castle. That's more than I deserve. You'll also be placed under the SDF, so you'll be registered as a medical officer with them. Since you'll be my superior, you'll be a colonel. Jeez. Lieutenant Colonel Irie. How does that sound to you? I'm not a military man. I'd rather refrain from being called Lieutenant Colonel. Director is already a frightening title as is. Oh my. He's getting a chance to research brain parasites, plus being given the title of Director of a new clinic as camouflage. Plus, it comes with staff and funding. He'll even have support from the Defense Agency and the Ministry of Health and Welfare, as well as a research lab with state-of-the-art equipment. No wonder he's laughing so excitedly. However, there are some risks too. Since he'll be involved with the secret research, he has an obligation to keep it a secret. Also, he's going to an area plagued by a mysterious and bizarre disease. There's no guarantee he won't contract it himself. But Erie is too young to even think about those things. Aware of all the risks, he quickly signed the contract with the ambition to have people recognize his talent once again. When I saw him sign the contract, I finally relaxed. I knew he would agree to join us, but at the same time, I was afraid of the chance that he'd refuse. Selecting a director proved more difficult than expected, and the only candidate Takano paired well with was Irie. So if Irie refused to take the position, then frankly, she'd be placed in an even worse situation. Now that Irie has agreed to take the position, research on Hinamizawa syndrome can finally begin. The research center, or rather, the clinic, will be completed next spring. The Ministry of Health and Welfare and the Defense Agency will send the best equipment and staff, plus an abundant supply of funds. Then, finally, our research will begin in earnest. Everything is going well. Of course it is. I've put so much effort into making sure things went smoothly up to this point. Okay, that's it. Congratulations, Director Irie. Major, the contract has been signed. Thank you. I look forward to working with you, Director Irie. I look forward to working with you too, Takano-san. I hope we can get along. I'll be devoting my best efforts to this. No, thank you. Let's both give our best. Now the position of director has been filled. Everything is set. Wahaha. That's great. Just great. Congratulations, Takano-san. No, Major Takano, isn't it? Wahaha. This was all possible thanks to your assistance. I must give my thanks to all of you. Oh, don't mention it. But we should save our congratulations until you finish your research, huh? You're only at the starting line, aren't you? Exactly. I'll be devoting my every waking moment to this research. We can hardly wait to see the result of what Dr. Takano couldn't finish. Well now, Sensei, let's not talk about business today. Let's have a toast to congratulate Takano-san and the Area Institute. Hello everyone, I'm Nagata from the Ministry of Health and Welfare. I would like to say a few things before the toast. Takano-san, make sure he works hard, okay? His research center will be supporting the Institute. If you need any technical support, just call him. Make him work hard? No, I have to thank you for your support. I'm Takano. Pleased to meet you. Takano-san, let me introduce you to these gentlemen. Meet Tomitake-kun and Okunogi-kun from the Self-Defense Force. There they are. They're your backup from the SDF. I'll let them introduce themselves. Nice to meet you. I'm Tomitake. I've been commanded to serve as auditor of this project. I look forward to working with you. The funding for our research is largely coming from the SDF. It's only natural for the SDF to assign a watchdog to make sure reasonable research is taking place. However, someone in a position like that should be my opponent. Why was someone in that position invited to this private party? Does that mean this auditor is on my side too? Seeing that thorough groundwork, I couldn't help but feel the strength of having a sponsor all over again. I won't be staying in Hinamizawa. I'll only come by routinely to check on the progress of the research. Oh, that's too bad. Hinamizawa is a beautiful place with clean air. Please come visit us anytime. Outside of work, too. Thank you. I guess I will. If he really is an auditor, I should maintain a good relationship with this man. He'll hold the key to all future adjustments of our funding so long as we continue drawing it from the SDF. Oh, that's Okanogi. He's in his military outfit. I don't remember if I actually looked at his sprite in the original. Nice to meet you. He's the commanding officer of the Mountain Dogs, one of our unconventional warfare units. They'll be stationed in Hinamizawa to provide you direct support, Major. Should I consider you my bodyguard, then? Their principal duty is guarding VIPs and preserving secrets. Think of them as your hands and feet, and work them hard. Thank you. Tomitake seems to be an honest type for a military man, but this Okanogi person looks the complete opposite. His main job is to preserve secrets, but I bet he's also good with espionage tactics, like counterintelligence and information control. Yes, that would explain his demeanor. Since the SDF is funding our research on Hinamizawa syndrome, of course, this is considered a military operation. Therefore, this research has to be done in secret. That's why a unit like this is necessary. Besides, it's very reassuring to have someone capable of combat working under me. I should maintain a good relationship with him, too. Okay, enough introductions. Come on, Tomitake-kun, you can relax, too. Let's put aside our ranks today and have a toast. While this is supposed to celebrate the establishment of the Erie Institute, Erie himself isn't here. But that is his job, after all. Erie is simply a puppet to fill a seat. Of course, I expect him to help me a little with his expertise, but he's ultimately an outsider. This was supposed to be a gathering where I would show my appreciation to those who helped me establish the Erie Institute, but it's turned into them thanking me for all my efforts. I'm always the one to pour alcohol for others, but today people are pouring alcohol in my glass. The new participants were trying to make me happy, and all the top people talked to me casually. They all praised my hard work and my efforts. My research is now recognized by many institutions. I'm ready to spread my wings open wide. And all the people who are expecting some returns once the research accomplishes something are trying to curry favor with me. But right now I'm just very grateful, regardless of their motives. Let's have a toast to wish the best of luck to Mio Takano-kun, and also to the new Erie Institute. Arai-sensei, please lead the toast. It's like a dream. I know. This is just the beginning, and I shouldn't be satisfied with this alone. But just for today, I can forget about everything else and enjoy this celebration. I'm not a heavy drinker, but the drinks taste good tonight, and the more I drink, the happier I get. Ah, this really is wonderful. To be called Major by Tomitake and the others is wonderful too. That's the rank my grandfather had during the war. That means I've finally caught up with my grandfather. This is only the beginning. From here on, I intend to reach what my grandfather couldn't. This is the best night of my life. Something I'm curious about in the previous chapter was, did Rika's mom get disappeared because she was also infected? Or did she actually suicide? That's a big question. I ended up leaving to fix my makeup. I'm filled with elation. I need to feel fresh air to calm myself down. My heart is about to explode because I'm so happy. The gathering is taking place a little distance away from the main building. The restaurant is in the main building, so I need to walk across the hallway. A beautiful and well-maintained Japanese garden is visible from the hallway. It's raining. I usually don't like rain, but I don't mind it at all today. I feel like even the raindrops are congratulating me. The cool air feels pleasant on my hot skin. It took me a moment to notice how unsteady my footsteps had become. Maybe I drank a little too much. It isn't like me to drink more than I can handle. Although this is a party, I don't want to embarrass myself, so I decided to cool off a little by looking at the beautiful Japanese garden. I found an elegant chair to set on a red carpet nearby and sat down on it. Since I was with the associates until now, I was forced to constantly be on guard against embarrassing myself. But now that I was alone, I could let go and truly relax. When I look up to the sky, I realize it's still raining hard, but in the distance, the horizon is a little lighter. Maybe it won't be raining for much longer. Well, that's normal. Rain stops eventually. No matter how cold it is or how hard it's raining, rain stops eventually. I saw a pair of sandals and an umbrella, almost inviting me, so I took them into the garden. The tasteless laughter coming from the party sounds far away. I tilted the umbrella and looked up to the sky. I felt the raindrops hit my face and gazed up at the sky for a while, forgetting all about my hair getting wet. I thought the rain would cool down my boiling heart, but as my body got cold, I started to feel miserable. My bare feet were all swollen, and the throbbing pain I felt made them seem twice their normal size. The gravel road continued forever. I didn't even know what direction I was heading in anymore. I could no longer hear my pursuer. Yeah, I thought so. I thought she was flashing back. I had probably lost him by running through the woods like mad. My body was covered in scratches. I finally started to feel the pain from that. I felt both cold and hungry. There was no place nearby to take shelter from the rain. I was just on a little path in the woods. My worst fear was that I could end up heading back towards the orphanage, after bolting and losing my sense of direction. I had crushed that man's finger. I didn't think I bit it off, but I was sure it would leave a scar. Taking that into consideration, it was very clear to me what kind of torture awaited me back at the orphanage. Therefore, I'd have to reach the House of Love and Mercy. If only it had been daytime, then I could easily have found the right way to go. However, with this rain, there was nothing I could do. But I couldn't stop. I had to keep walking until I reached something. I wondered if Eriko and the others had escaped safely. I didn't know how many people came after us, but at least one came after me. In other words, it meant they had a better chance. Did they reach the House of Love and Mercy? Were they drying themselves with soft towels? And if they still remembered me, would they save a towel for me too? I felt so cold. I wanted to find shelter and sit down, but there was nothing of the sort. I saw a tree that looked like I could take shelter under it, but the branches and leaves were dripping with water. It was then that I realized that the sky was gradually getting darker. Would this day end in rain? There were no streetlights where I was. Soon enough, it would be totally dark. Then I wouldn't be able to walk any further. I just wanted to sit down, even if it was raining. But if I did sit down, I probably wouldn't be able to stand up again. So I endured. If I hadn't escaped with Eriko and the others, I wouldn't have had to go through such misery. But compared to what I had to go through at the orphanage, this was nothing. Thinking about that was the only way to make myself move. But when I thought about that, it was true that this freezing cold rain was far better than my life at the orphanage. But that was only when compared to the life at the orphanage. Was it better than the normal lives of normal kids my age? I didn't even need to think about that. When my parents were alive, although we weren't rich, we led a normal life. The gentle smiles and forgivable selfishness. The sound of my mother cooking breakfast in the morning. The sound of a newspaper being folded. Precious memories like that. I didn't need anything else. I had plenty of friends. I had fun at school. I didn't like my teacher, but I liked studying. I had everything I needed. That was enough for me. I never complained. I never did anything bad. So why was this happening to me? Everything went downhill after that train accident. The die of fate kept rolling a 1. Again. The die never showed its good side to me. If the accident was my fault, then I could have accepted it. But it wasn't. I wasn't even there. I waited for my parents at home. I liked going to the mall with them. We always had a meal at the restaurant in the mall. I always told them to let me know if they were going to the mall. But on that day, they went without me while I went to my friend's house to play. My friend wasn't in, so I went back home. I didn't see anyone at home and found a note that said they were going to the mall. I regretted going to my friend's house. I waited at home. They didn't come home. They were still gone by dinner time. I was getting hungry and got angry with my parents for leaving me. I thought they were having dinner at the mall restaurant without me. If I hadn't gone to my friend's house, I would be eating dinner at the restaurant too. I loved the little flags that came with the kids' meal. I was collecting those flags. They don't really do those flags anymore, at least that I know of. Yes, I was. I was trying to collect 20 of them, thinking that once I collected 20, something wonderful would happen. But I couldn't collect 20 of them. I only needed one more. If I had one more, maybe the accident wouldn't have happened. A very sad memory of a flag from a kid's meal. I kept waiting for my parents to come home from the mall. I was hungry, so I started to eat some dried fish. If I ate too much, my mother would find out, so I was careful not to gorge myself. Then the phone rang. I assumed it was from my parents. I answered the phone in an angry manner, but it wasn't them at all. What happened to the house? We had rented it, so maybe someone else had already moved in. What happened to my room? What about my desk and all the flags that were in the right middle drawer? If it wasn't my house anymore, then where was I supposed to go? Even if it remained my house, my parents wouldn't be there to welcome me or protect me. Just because I didn't have my parents to protect me, the whole world became so cruel. How could anyone take me away from the house I was used to living in, just because my parents were gone? Why didn't they just leave me alone? They asked me many things. They tried to confirm many things. But how could I have understood any of the forms they gave me? I was asked a yes or no question. I had no choice but to answer yes. And before I knew it, I ended up at the orphanage. It was beyond heartless. I didn't do anything wrong. I was just a little girl. I had to sign so many papers. But why this? The warm and gentle world ended suddenly without advance notice, and I was thrown into the cruel and merciless world alone. Boom. Was this a real world? Did I have any allies at all? Just because my parents died and I didn't have any relatives, the world had become so sad. When is the die going to come up with a 6 instead of a 1 to make up for the continuous series of the ladder? Ooh, tears were pouring down my cheeks. Salty taste further saddened and irritated me. I couldn't do anything but cry. But no matter how hard I cried or pitied myself, the cold rain wouldn't warm my body or save me. I didn't even know where I was or in which direction I should go. Eriko showed me the map to the House of Love and Mercy when we were planning our escape, but we only learned the shortest route. I was completely lost. But strangely, after I finished crying, I felt a groundless strength within myself. I once learned that tears wash away particles in the eyes, but there's a different purpose to them too. Tears also wash away what's in the heart. I clenched my fists and forced my feet to move. I headed in the direction that I believed to be correct on the gravel road. The rain was still pouring, and it was getting darker and darker. I roared at the sky amidst the rain. My sadness was turning into anger. Stupid God, why? What have I done to deserve this? What did I do? I didn't do anything. I was just living a normal life, that's all. So why this? My daddy told me there are good things and bad things in life, but neither last for long. That means this misery won't last that long either, right? I won't be all alone in this miserable place forever, right? Isn't that right? As I looked up, I felt the raindrops hit my face. There is no God. I knew that in my heart. But such disbelief wouldn't save me. If I believed he was there, I should have been saved. No, I needed him to be there. Was he going to answer me? I heard thunder. Then I realized he was there. He was there and he was listening to me. In his eyes, everyone was supposed to be equal, and he was listening to me. I've gone through enough, more than enough. If I was too happy before, then I could take this misery. But I wasn't. I was living a normal life. If you ask me if I was happy then, sure I was. But this is what I get in return? It's not fair at all. I heard thunder again. He was listening. I continued, If this fate of mine was your mistake, let me be free. Please end my misery and let me be happy again. But if this is, in fact, my fate, and I'm supposed to live this way until the end, I don't want it. Kill me. Kill me now with your lightning. Just finish me off now. Go on. Kill me ruthlessly. Right here and now. I heard thunder again. It was loud enough to make me shiver. Normally, I would just hide in the house and wait until the thunder went away. But on that day, I wasn't afraid. Come on. Kill me. Miyoko Tanashi is... Oh, so her name is Miyoko. Okay. Tanashi is right here. Just like you killed my parents. Take my life too. The heavens replied to my provocation. The heavens took aim at me, a lowly human who dared sling constant, insolent insults at them. That was my wish. I opened my arms. He's God, so he wouldn't miss me. However, I guess even God makes mistakes sometimes. Although he's supposed to be fair, he had been unfair with me. Come on, kill me. Take me to heaven. But if you fail to kill me, then try turning my destiny around. A flash from heaven. I thought I smelled something burning just before it hit. The sheer force knocked me to the ground. It was a strange experience. It was something that had just happened. But it already felt like it happened many years ago. I had no idea how long I was down for. I smelled something odd. The bad stench woke me up. When I looked, I saw that a huge tree behind me had been split open. Its leaves were smoldering. I looked up and saw sparks in the darkness. I couldn't understand what just happened. I just stood there. The thunderbolt had struck. It didn't strike me. It struck the tree behind me. I didn't get to die. He was telling me to keep walking in the woods in the cold rain. I won my bet with God. I bet my life. I bet my life against the lightning and thunder. It could have killed me instantly. But he missed. So he had to fix my life. I looked up at the sky, laughing and bragging that I was still alive. I heard thunder again. It was acknowledging its loss. Come on, God, save me. I won the bet, so save me from this misery. I stood there. I waited for God to do something while the rain poured down on me. But he didn't answer me again. I couldn't hear the thunder anymore. Again, I felt the warm tears pour down my cheeks. What was I thinking? If there was a God in heaven, he wouldn't have let anything like this happen to me. My miserable life was the proof of God's non-existence. The darkness was about to swallow me utterly. Would I have to sleep out there? God must have wanted me to die slowly in this cold rain, instead of granting me an instant death by lightning. I wish the sun would go away. I wish the sun would never rise. I wish that, as the woods had grown completely dark, my existence would be hidden by that darkness. I wish that I could just disappear. Footsteps? Had it been an eternity, or was it a matter of seconds? I couldn't even tell time in such darkness. It was then that I saw something. It was a light. I noticed it only because the woods were so dark. But was it really there? Had it been there this whole time? I felt like the light was inviting me towards it. It was a fluorescent light. I didn't normally like fluorescent lights because I always thought they looked cold. But I didn't feel coldness from that white light. I made myself believe that the light was a guide sent by God. I had to believe, otherwise I wouldn't be saved. The light reflected in a puddle. It wasn't a muddy puddle. It was a puddle on asphalt. I had made it out of the woods and was on a paved road. The light was a street light. Being on a paved road didn't really resolve anything. It was just a country road. It was a road that went through the woods, so there were no houses, no shops, not even a single car going by. There weren't too many streetlights on the road, so it was still very dark. My feet touched the asphalt. It felt so different from the gravel I had been walking on earlier. It felt almost merciful. My feet had grown used to walking on gravel, but after feeling the softness of asphalt, I never wanted to go back to the former again. I could only choose between heading left or heading right. I was grateful to God for leading me to this asphalt road, but I wish that he had given me a little more guidance. Such a little bit of luck couldn't make up for all the unhappiness I had gone through. And that was when I sensed his guidance. I saw another light in the distance. it was only on the right side. I headed towards it, and when I got there, I understood what it was. I was amazed to find it there. A telephone booth. Who would actually make a call in the middle of nowhere? A telephone booth in the countryside was rather unusual. There were plenty of red public phones all over, but I had always thought telephone booths only existed in big cities. It almost looked as though the telephone booth had been put there as punishment for doing something bad. When I thought that, I felt bad for the lonely telephone booth. It reminded me of myself. Even if I went inside the telephone booth, what could I even do in there anyway? I already knew the answer to that question, but no matter what, I just had to get in there. The door squeaked as I opened it. There were lots of bugs flitting around because of the light. I usually hated bugs, but in that moment, I felt like that they were my friends, sheltering from the rain like me. There was no heater, but it was still very warm inside of the booth. It sheltered me from the cold rain. Soon enough, I crumbled to the floor. The warmth from the fluorescent light embraced me gently, and I felt like it was telling me that it was okay to cry. But I had no more tears left, because I cried them all when the lightning struck. Aching scratches covered my body. My calves were in pain too. Everything hurt everywhere, and I didn't want to get up ever again. I wished I could fall asleep, but if I did that, the staff from the orphanage might find me. The windows on the booth were high up, so if I sat down, I wouldn't be visible from the outside. But as it was the only shelter in these dark woods, the staff would be sure to check it. That was why I couldn't stay there for long. Telephone booths from back then weren't completely made of glass, so it was possible to hide inside one. My exhausted spirit understood that I had to move, but I just couldn't make myself. Maybe I was experiencing some kind of vision. I felt a strange calmness that I had never experienced before. I didn't feel that I was myself. It was very strange. I thought that maybe I was killed by that evening. I'd assumed that I was still Miyako Tanashi, but maybe I wasn't her at all. I seriously considered those things. Then I started to think that the telephone booth had something to do with it. Because God led me there, He couldn't have done so just because it was providing shelter from the rain. There had to be something else. I wondered what it was. Could there be something in the booth that could save me? But what? A telephone booth is used to make a phone call. But I didn't have any money. But then, I noticed something that looked like copper. My heart skipped a beat. The 10-yen coin I saw wasn't there before. Did I just miss it? I didn't think so. It must have just showed up. In other words, this 10-yen coin was guidance from God, who was telling me to make a call with that coin. But who? There was no telephone book. Oh, in that case, I could only call a number I knew. Did God want me to do that then? There was only one coin. I could only call one number, and I couldn't talk for that long. I had challenged God earlier, so it was just a matter of time, of course, to think that God was challenging me in return. I had only one chance, and He wanted me to test my luck with that chance. I left the phone booth and looked up at the sky. Then I yelled in my heart, "You're on, God!" I wondered who I could call. Who? My house? My parents were dead, and I had no relatives. Even if I called, nobody would answer. Actually, the phone bill wouldn't have been paid for a long time, so the phone line would already be disconnected. My house was my lost life itself. No, the debris of my life. Calling home would simply be an expression of regret, which ran counter to the positive attitude of one trying to change their life. So surely using the coin to call my house was wrong, which meant I had to cast this 10-yen coin towards my future. Future? My future? What future anyway? Then I heard a huge thunderclap, which cleared my mind. In that clear state of mind, I saw something from the past. It was the last sight of my father, his final moments on the hospital bed. Though suffering from pain, he tried to tell me something very important. Moving on down. Okay. He wanted to tell me something else, but the doctor stopped him from talking, so it wasn't audible. It shouldn't have been, but it was to me. I heard it. I heard it, but I didn't want to hear him say it while suffering. So I pretended that I didn't hear. He said it while coughing. I heard it. They were numbers. Oh, she literally had a phone number. I swallowed once. That's right. It was a phone number. He knew nobody would take me in because we had no relatives. He told me to get in touch with him. Dr. Hifumi Takano. He tried to tell me his phone number. What had I done? He tried so hard, using his last chance to tell me the most important thing. The thunder from earlier had made me remember. The number I couldn't remember even once came out so smoothly. I dialed it in. This really was it. This was the number for my father's teacher, Dr. Takano. But my hand stopped just as I tried to put the coin in. What if I hadn't remembered it correctly? No, there was no need to hesitate. I had to believe in myself. This had to be the correct number. I had to dial it before I forgot it again. I picked up the phone and put the coin in. Beep. I heard the dial tone on the other end. At that point, I decided to kill myself if it didn't work. I could go back into the woods and wait for another lightning bolt. I could lie down and let the rainwater drown me too. I could also fall asleep in the middle of the road and wait for a car to run me over. I made up my mind and put the coin in. I didn't hesitate any longer. I dialed the number at once, but I had to be careful. If you dial quickly, sometimes you can make mistakes. I was getting irritated, and that almost made the phone number go vague in my head. I dialed the last digit, and heard some electronic sounds on the other end. I hoped that I dialed the correct number. I didn't know what to say to Dr. Takano if it did connect. Where was I? What was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to ask him? I didn't know any of those things. Making a call isn't cheap. 1 10-yen coin would only buy me short time to talk. The line must have connected then. I heard a ringtone. I only had a short time once someone answered the phone. I thought for a moment that I should put the phone down. Then I could at least get the coin back. I could call back after sorting out my thoughts. Then someone answered. Hello, this is the Takano residence. I felt like I was suffocating. My memory had been correct. I couldn't tell the age of the speaker, but it was a grown man's voice. Anyone who was my father's teacher must have been quite old. Never mind that. I had to hurry and say something. Hurry. Are you Dr. Takano? Dr. Hifumi Takano? Yes, who is this? He must have been suspicious. I couldn't blame him. A stranger was asking him about his name. Of course he'd get suspicious. I'm sorry. I'm Tanashi. Miyoko Tanashi. Tanashi-san? Yes. My father told me to get in touch with you. His name is Takemitsu Tanashi. Tanashi. Tanashi-kun. I remember him. His voice suddenly changed. Dr. Takano had remembered his old student. I'm his daughter. He told me to call you. Did something happen to Tanashi-kun? Not good. I was going to run out of time. My parents died in a train accident. I was told to call you. Tanashi-kun is dead? I see. Both of them? Sorry to hear that. I knew him from when I was teaching at a college. He was a very hard-working young man. I think the last time I saw him was at the wedding. Obviously, he didn't know I was born. But he remembered my father. That was truly a stroke of luck. And what did Tanashi-kun want to tell me? Well, I didn't know what to say. I was only told to call Dr. Takano. How could I tell him that? My time was running out. I felt more and more anxious by the minute. Phone calls are disconnected without notice. But somehow I sensed it. I only had enough time left for one sentence. So I decided to say one sentence filled with all of my hopes. Help me! The phone call got disconnected. Maybe he only heard part of what I said. I could only hope he was able to sense my despair. I couldn't hear anything from the receiver anymore. But I actually talked to Dr. Takano. I confirmed that Dr. Takano existed. He existed, and he remembered my father. If he grieved over his student's death, he would come visit my house, and he would find out I was sent to an orphanage. Then he would come get me. That's when tears flowed down my cheeks again. Back then, wouldn't he be able to call the phone booth if he used, I think it was like star 69? God, it's been so long since I had to use that. I gotta look this up real quick. About this old man. Last call return. Yup. Oh, that was in Canada and the US only. And Star 67, I think, blocked it on caller ID systems. Man, that was such an old thing. Alright, let's get back to this. I never knew that finding even a grain of hope could make me feel so happy and strong. The voice I heard on the phone was so warm and dependable. My father must have thought about me for a long time in that hospital bed, and came up with a name that he could trust with his daughter with. Dr. Hifumi Takano. So I could trust Dr. Takano. I had to believe that he would find me. But it might take more than just a few days. I'd have to wait patiently. A few days? A month? More? I could only wait patiently. Either way, I couldn't stay in the telephone box. The staff would easily find me there. I went out into the rain again, but this time the rain felt a little warmer than before. I had wished to die by lightning, but after that phone call, I was filled with hope and a will to live. I wanted to live, and that was why I felt pain all over my body. When I still wished to die, I didn't feel anything. I had to wait patiently until Dr. Takano came to pick me up. I had to get to the House of Love and Mercy. That would be the best place to wait for him. I didn't think the orphanage would tell him I escaped to the House of Love and Mercy, but the house wouldn't stop me from calling him. All I'd have to do was call him again and let him know where I was, but I didn't know where I could find the House of Love and Mercy. I couldn't see any signs anywhere. I didn't even know what direction the orphanage I escaped from was in. But I couldn't just stop. I had to walk. I had to find shelter. I had to find someone and ask for directions to the House of Love and Mercy. I had to keep going, because I finally saw the light at the end of the tunnel. The chills and throbbing pain tormented me, but I couldn't die until I met Takano-sensei. I wished a car would come by. If it was someone who lived in the area, I could ask, but the police wouldn't do me any good. I was sure the orphanage had already called the police about our escape, and they wouldn't be forgiving. The police was sure to send me back to the orphanage. Either way, I wished that someone would show up. Otherwise, I'd have to keep walking on the asphalt in the darkness forever. Now we flash back to the present, possibly? Nope. How long did I walk? Still no car. Just as I couldn't help but think that maybe the world perished, leaving only me behind, a car showed up. I sensed the car coming up behind me, so I turned around. I saw their headlights approaching me. I thought for a moment, should I stand in the middle of the street to stop the car? It was so dark. I didn't think the car would notice me if I just waved at it. But if I were to stand in the middle of the street, I could get run over. While I thought, the car was getting closer and closer. When I made the phone call, I panicked and didn't know what to say. So with this car, I'd have to think very carefully. If I couldn't think of anything, then I should just let the car go. With those thoughts vaguely on my mind, I was incredibly surprised when the car slammed the brakes with a screech and came to a stop. Maybe I wasn't all there after that miraculous experience of lightning striking me. I had lost half my mind in those dark woods, so I probably wasn't thinking very straight, because the car had stopped after recognizing me. In other words, the driver knew who I was, and the only people in the area who'd recognize me were... Suddenly, a chill ran through my whole body. I started to dash away. I heard a voice calling after me. I no longer had the strength to run. My feet were trembling, and I couldn't make them cooperate. I realized then that I shouldn't have sat down in the telephone booth. That was why I couldn't keep running. I was suddenly grabbed from behind, the collar of my clothes almost choking me. I heard fabric being ripped. I fell in a puddle, and a staff member got on top of me. This time, his finger wasn't in my mouth. All I could do was struggle. As I did so, I remembered all the scary stories Eriko and the others told me. All the tortures the child who was caught had to endure. The drowned duck punishment, the squished caterpillar punishment, and the splayed piggy punishment. The names of those eerie-sounding punishments came to my mind. I screamed and struggled with all my might, but it was too late. I was shoved into the back seat of the car. Why couldn't they just let me go? Simple, they didn't want me talking about them to anyone. The staff were yelling and screaming while chasing me, but once we were in the car, they went silent. It was like the Grim Reaper had come to get me. Whether I liked it or not, I had to come to terms with the fact that my luck had run out. But, but, I had called Takano-sensei, so I knew he would come to get me. I didn't know when that would be, but I knew it would happen someday. So I wanted to live. I would be saved if I lived. I couldn't even imagine the kind of punishment that was waiting for me. But even so, I said to myself, I have to live. I had already found the light at the end of the tunnel. All I had to do was endure until I reached it. The car stopped. We had arrived at the front gate of the orphanage. The 2 staff members grabbed my shoulders so I wouldn't run. My shoulders were very skinny, so it hurt a lot. I was scared of what I would have to go through. We went through the door, and I was finally sheltered from the rain. In a way, I wasn't sheltered at all, though. It was the middle of the night, and long past time to turn all the lights off. The orphanage should have been quiet. But I heard a noise. It was a strange noise. The noise of a shower. The noise of metal objects crashing into each other. Also the staff's yelling and screaming. A chill went down my spine. What could I possibly write down to fully describe this fear? A staff member knocked on the door of the storage room, and the door opened. The moment it did, an angry roar issued from inside. The sight leapt into my eyes. I couldn't completely take in the bizarre scene before me. 2 staff members were hitting a mat with bamboo swords while yelling violently. It was a mat used in, the one you use when you do gymnastics. Oh, that, okay. But why was it rolled up like that, so that a human could be in it? The rolled up mat was tied with a string and was standing up in the corner. The staff members kept hitting it. Usually words are said to a person. But why were they yelling at a rolled up mat? The way they were hitting and yelling at it, it was as if they'd gone mad. But wait, I could see something sticking out from the top of the rolled up mat. It was... let me see. Whose shoes were those? All of a sudden, I froze and couldn't think anymore. One man stood in front of me. The man's pinky finger was wrapped in bandages. My eyes moved upwards from his pinky finger and met with his. The beast's eyes met mine, peering with intent to devour me. I squeezed out a voiceless scream. My voice didn't come out, so it was more like a goldfish opening and closing its mouth. The beast stuck his little finger in front of me and roared. I couldn't tell if it was a word or a meaningless shriek, but I was certain it was something abusive. I was scared. I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. I knew that Dr. Takano would show up to save me. That was why I had to live and submit myself to the fear. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The hand with the bandages grabbed my hair and dragged me along. All I could do was apologize and beg for forgiveness while hoping the beast had even a tiny bit of mercy in him. I was like a broken, apologizing doll. A mad doll that kept muttering apologies until its key wound down. I was their toy, shedding tears, coughing blood, and apologizing in place of clicking gears. I could see into the shower room while he dragged me along. The door was open, and I heard wailing from the inside. What I saw was very strange. There was a locker on its side in the shower. What an odd sight. A locker was taking a shower, sideways. I'd never even imagined anything like it before. I'm forgetting all these names, so I can already see that these are 2 of the punishments. The drowning, whatever, and the other one. Here it is. The drowned duck punishment, that's this one. I'm guessing the squished caterpillar is the other one. The locker was taking a cold shower while 2 staff members hit it with bamboo swords. That explained the metallic noise I heard before. The beast didn't want me to see that. He pulled my hair violently and twisted my neck so that I looked in the opposite direction. Then I realized. He didn't do that to stop me from watching that shower. He did it to make me look at something else. I saw a window in a courtyard. That's the splayed piggy. Usually it was too dark to see anything. But the lights were on, and the courtyard was very bright. Then I saw it. Inside of the hen house. I saw... What is that? That hair was Eriko's. But why was she... That was far too. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Ah. I don't want to die. I know Dr. Takano is coming to save me. I know he's coming. I was taken to the staff bathroom. It stunk of ammonia. I saw him, which just doesn't fit in a bathroom. Why was this in the bathroom, I thought? He's not playing him with... Is he? No way. No, 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 no. Tanashi, this is your punishment for breaking the rules, okay? Everyone must follow the rules. If you don't, you get punished. Do you understand? I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. I'll do everything you tell me to do. I promise, I really do. Please spare me. Please spare me from... No, that hurts. No, 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 no. No. Hmm? Then what? Oh, that's the end of it. Well, that's a good spot to stop then. We have no tips still. All it's been is just Takuma's past. Well, Tanashi's past, I guess. Well, that's 3 chapters done, so that's a pretty good stopping point then. Next stream will be Tuesday night at 7:30 to 10:30. It'll be more of Returnal, where we continue area number 3. Well, I'll probably die against the boss. Have a good rest of your morning, day, or evening. Bye-bye.